These kids were so innocent. They were Christian kids. They were really made for each other.
The state park ranger goes over the beach and sees what looks to be two people in a sleeping bag. It was immediately clear that they were deceased. It didn't appear a murder-suicide. And absolutely nothing was missing. Who did Jason and Lindsay know? Where have they been? Who could they have ran into? Is there anyone that would want them dead?
He had frozen animals in his apartment. He was definitely kind of living on the fringes.
It was parents' worst nightmare.
That doesn't happen to normal people. That happens in stories and movies.
August 2004, El Dorado, California. Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen are beginning one of the most exciting times in their young lives. They're getting married in less than a month and enjoying a beautiful Northern California summer as they count down the days to their wedding.
They were unlike anybody I had ever met, and they were very warm to everyone. There was not a mean bone in their body. Jason was super, super friendly, just a very free spirit, did his own thing, had his own style. And Lindsay had the most peaceful personality I've ever met.
Lindsay grew up in Fresno, Ohio, in a loving family alongside her older sister, Carrie.
What a joy to have that sister for Carrie. She looked just like him, even as a baby. She was just a beautiful child, and she just completed our family.
I'm not sure she looked exactly like me. Once when she was doing a harvest party thing, she dressed up to look like me. At the time I had a mustache, and she penciled in a mustache and wore a suit and tie, and I felt very blessed and honored that she would do that. Very sweet kid.
They went to public school up to a certain grade, and then we homeschooled. Her social life was here at church.
Our church was kind of the center of not only our lives, but our girls as well. We really emphasized being a spiritual family, and that's exactly what we are. When she was a little girl, she told her mother and I that she'd like to be a missionary, and we were really pleased and proud of her for that.
After earning her high school diploma, in 2003, Lindsay is accepted to a Christian college in Bradley, West Virginia, 220 miles from her home in Ohio.
Her older sister went to Appalachian Bible College, and so that's where Lindsay decided to go.
She was really involved in the outdoor life ministry they had there.
The school's outdoor ministry combines nature activities like whitewater rafting with religious instruction.
She really was good at counseling young kids and leading them and showing them Christ.
During her first semester of college, Lindsay has an unexpected, life-changing moment when she meets 26-year-old Jason Allen.
He had graduated and went back down to be a whitewater rafting guide, and that's when they got together.
Jason is from West Michigan and shares Lindsay's passion for spiritual outreach through the great outdoors.
He came from a great family, and he grew up in a wonderful home.
Jason told his parents when he was just a little guy that he felt called to be a missionary. I believe that God brought them together for that very purpose. These kids were so innocent, you know. They were Christian kids. They were really made for each other.
Just 5 months later, in February 2004, Jason approaches Lindsay's parents about taking his relationship with their daughter to the next level.
Jason came to talk to me while we were sitting in our living room. And then he said, I am so nervous. And so he actually asked for Lindsay's hand in marriage, and I said yes.
And they were just a puzzle piece that fit together.
Lindsay and Jason set a wedding date in September. They planned to spend the summer together working as counselors at a Christian adventure camp in Northern California.
During the day, they would take the kids whitewater rafting, rock climbing, and long hikes and swims that really challenged the kids.
The camp is located in Coloma, California. It's right on the South Fork of the American River. You can literally walk out of your tent and, maybe 200 yards down to the river bank. It's super peaceful and really beautiful.
On the 1st of June, 2004, Lindsay and Jason load their car for the drive from Ohio to California.
The last time we physically saw her, she was a little nervous. And I remember seeing her walk off, and it was kind of like some of these things you look back now on. It's almost like you had an inkling. It's really weird, I don't know. The female intuition type thing.
When they arrived at camp, everyone's new, and I just remember seeing Jason and thinking, he's so tall. And Lindsay was pretty short. And so they were a little bit of a funny couple just because of the height difference.
Every Sunday, Jason and Lindsay would come out of the camp and find a payphone.
She'd call and talk to her mom for a while, and then she'd talk to me.
On Friday, August 13th, as their exhilarating summer begins to wind down, Lindsay and Jason plan one last adventure. They head out for a 2.5-hour road trip to San Francisco.
Everybody had the weekends off. That last week, their plans were to go out to see the Golden Gate Bridge and camp and get away because it was the last weekend and they wanted to spend some alone time together as a couple. Sunday early evening, you would be expected back to camp around 4 or 5 o'clock because that was when we prepped for the week.
That Sunday evening, the couple doesn't return to the camp.
They took work serious. So when they didn't show up, first it was like, this is weird. What's going on? But nobody jumped to any kind of crazy conclusions. They thought, oh, well, maybe they got stuck in traffic, or maybe their car broke down because they drove a really old car.
When Lindsay fails to make her weekly call home, her parents grow concerned.
We were nervous when the phone call didn't come because she never missed a Sunday.
When Monday rolled around, the concern was growing because we were thinking, okay, well, if their car did break down, I'm sure they would call us by now. But nobody knew where they were. And that's the moment where you go to that dark place of thinking the worst.
Monday, the camp called and said, do you know where Jason and Lindsay are?
We knew immediately something was wrong. The next day, we flew out and then the search began.
Investigators discover a window into Jason and Lindsay's final moments.
They both got big smiles on their face, just enjoying a tourist day out in the city, enjoying life.
Gifts from the beach, the pictures, and these writings.
And chase a possible killer who stays just out of their reach.
He was definitely living on the fringes, alternate lifestyle. He was somewhat savvy with weapons.
She had messaged him saying, maybe I should just go turn you in for that 50 grand reward. And why don't you go shoot some more people and try to get away with it?
It's been 3 days since anyone has seen Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen. Lindsay's worried parents fly from Ohio to California, where the couple were working as camp counselors.
We went directly to the sheriff's station and talked to the sheriff deputy.
We get missing persons cases all the time, and most of the time it could be anything. It could be something simple.
He said, maybe they went and got eloped and got married. I said, no, they wouldn't have done that. They're excited about this wedding. They're serious about this job. That just wouldn't have happened.
Deputies tagged the license plate of Lindsay's red car as missing in the DMV database. Kathy and Chris next head to the Rock and Water camp, where Lindsay and Jason's fellow counselors, wondering if the couple returned early and ran into some kind of trouble, have already started their own search in the area.
They're all outdoor adventure type people, so they knew the places where they could possibly have fallen and gotten hurt.
We searched night and day.
On Wednesday, August 18th, 5 days after Lindsay and Jason were last seen driving away from the camp, a park ranger is traveling along the coastline in Sonoma County, about 165 miles away.
He came upon a red car. It was off the side in a pullout, but they're facing the wrong direction. So this park ranger, he runs the license plate, and it immediately flagged like, hey, this is a missing persons case out of El Dorado County.
The car is parked along the highway above Fishhead Beach, a remote, picturesque location near the town of Jenner, 80 miles north of San Francisco.
It's just a beautiful place. It becomes steeper and steeper, cliffs, but gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous place.
The park ranger hikes down to the beach in search of the missing couple.
The state park ranger goes over the beach, and sure enough, he sees what looks to be two people in a sleeping bag down there. It was immediately clear that they were deceased.
The ranger alerts the sheriff's department, and deputies rush to the scene.
More deputies arrive, and they secure the scene.
Deputies discover that both young victims were shot once in the head. In backpacks next to the bodies, they find 2 driver's licenses, identifying the victims as Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen.
It wasn't immediately clear what exactly happened. There's no weapons here, so it didn't appear a murder-suicide. Absolutely nothing was missing, so it doesn't appear that it was a robbery. There was no sign of any type of sexual assault.
Investigators look for anything that might yield a DNA sample that could be traced to a suspect.
One of the things that was collected was this beer. So we get DNA off that, but we don't know if it's involved or not.
They used metal detectors to look for shell casings. They didn't have that at the scene. The killer collected the shell casings off the beach after the murders. So that's just a cold, calculated murder.
As the investigators continue to process the crime scene, news of the awful discovery quickly makes its way to the camp and Lindsay's parents.
They found their bodies on an isolated beach. What they thought was a safe place was parents' worst nightmare.
remember it like it was yesterday. But the owner of the camp, he said, Jason and Lindsay were found, but they're dead. I remember thinking, this isn't true. This can't be true. That can't be my friends. That doesn't happen to normal people. That happens in stories and movies.
Back at the beach, detectives find a disposable camera in Jason's backpack. Hoping there might be photos containing clues to what happened, they send the film out to be developed. Several hours later, the photos come in. What detectives see deepens the mystery of Lindsay and Jason's final moments. Nothing in the pictures indicates that they were in trouble or feared for their lives.
As horrible as it is, how cool. Because there's photos of them. You see the San Francisco skyline in the background. They both got big smiles on their face. Just enjoying a tourist day out in the city. Enjoying life.
Detectives soon arrive at the camp to meet with Lindsay's parents and offer what comfort they can.
It was really hard to fathom why in the world anybody would kill them. But some of the greatest detectives in the world from Sonoma County came to us. And we trusted them.
The investigators give Lindsay's parents the photos from the camera they found with Lindsay and Jason, along with notes the couple had written in a guest book at the beach trail entrance.
Gifts from the beach, the pictures, and these writings. There's a lot of gratitude when we see these pictures.
Lindsay wrote in the registry, "The sun is going down in the horizon, and all I see are the beams shining on the cliff face, and I know that God is awesome. I look around and I see his creation all around me."
How precious is that?
With no clues gleaned from the couple's photos and no ballistics evidence recovered from the beach, investigators know they face an uphill battle to determine what led to this double murder.
Early on, it became clear. These were awesome people. Had no enemies, no beef with anyone. There was no one that would want to hurt them.
There was no comforting information as to who did this, why did they do it, what was their motive, because it was so bizarre. They were beautiful people that didn't have enemies. So we were left to latch on to whatever our brains could come up with, and most of that stuff wasn't very good.
Sonoma County detectives investigating the murders of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen can find no immediate explanation for why the couple was shot to death on an isolated beach, and nothing pointing to a suspect.
It's who did it? And you start looking into, okay, who did Jason and Lindsay know? Where have they been? Who could they have ran into? Do they have friends around here? Who could it be? Is there anyone that would want them dead?
Investigators hope to create a timeline of Lindsay and Jason's movements after they left the camp on August 13th, knowing that retracing the couple's steps might lead them to the answers they need.
At the time, tracking people was so more difficult back then than it is now. Jason and Lindsay didn't have cell phones. They had to check ATM, credit cards. Where did they go? Where did they stop?
A charge receipt informs detectives that the couple arrived at their first stop on the morning of Saturday, August 14th.
We know that they were in San Francisco, that they did a little bit of shopping. They used their credit card there and got a couple of small items.
They'd bought 2 tiny bottles of Tabasco on Fisherman's Wharf.
They were there having fun, tourists in San Francisco.
Detectives contact the store, but the owner doesn't remember Lindsay or Jason and doesn't have any security cameras.
They leave San Francisco, we believe, sometime early on Saturday.
Another charge receipt from later that afternoon shows that after leaving the city, Jason and Lindsay traveled around 60 miles north.
We know that they went to Bodega, which is a small town very near the coast.
We believe they stopped at a surf shop.
Detectives contact the surf shop owner. He tells them he does remember Lindsay and Jason.
By his account, they were inquiring kind of where to stay.
They had asked, like, where would be a good place for us to, spend the night and do some camping. And they were just, I think, generally steered toward the coast. After that, it's a little blurry, but we know that they ended up the coast, on the beach.
As police try to put the pieces of Lindsay and Jason's journey together, word of the murders hits the media.
My husband and I had the news on, and all of a sudden it came on the TV, picture of Lindsay and Jason, and it was terrible, really. Really was very difficult.
A lot of people were troubled by this murder because they felt like it could happen to them. It could happen to their family. It could happen to anybody who's visiting, spending the night out at the coast.
It had a big impact on the community. People were really unnerved and frightened and just kind of generally freaked out that this had happened. Some people bought guns or borrowed guns from neighbors. There was a community meeting. The whole room was sort of pressure-filled. The sheriff's office had no suspects. We had a lot of news coverage following the murders. Ultimately, they got over 1,000 tips and calls.
One in particular catches the investigators' attention. On Saturday, August 21st, a woman calls the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department and urges them to look into a man with a criminal record who frequents the Jenner area.
Sean Gallen, he was a known person. He had fish and game violations.
One of his girlfriends, she came forward and said, hey, he's not right. He's doing weird things.
He's a kind of self-styled survivalist. He killed animals without a license. He used drugs heavily.
Although Sean Gallen only has minor charges on his police record, it's the best potential lead detectives have. They rush to his home in Guerneville, 20 minutes inland from the beach in Jenner.
They questioned him about those murders, and he denied any involvement in the Jenner murders.
He was adamant. Denied it. Wasn't him.
At that time, they searched his apartment. They found guns, ammunition, Kevlar vest, a spear.
We had our thoughts, our suspicions.
There was a hope that there would be some way to link him to the Jenner murders.
Two weeks after the murders of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen, A tip leads police to a possible suspect, Sean Gallen. A search of his home turns up guns and several strange items.
He had frozen animals in his apartment. He was definitely kind of living on the fringes, alternate lifestyle. He was somewhat savvy with weapons, and he was, I would say it's fair to say, a bit antisocial.
But with no ballistics evidence recovered from the murder scene, Sean's guns cannot be connected to the murders, and nothing else found in his apartment ties him to the crime, despite investigators' suspicions. The case is back to square one. Devastating news for Lindsay's parents, who have remained in California seeking answers.
I think we kind of expected an arrest. We were there a couple weeks, and then when we came home, we had their memorial service to get ready for.
On September 4th, 2004, a week before Lindsay and Jason had been scheduled to be married, their friends and family gather at the Cutshall's hometown church.
Lindsay's already picked out her flowers for the wedding, and the florist in town, when she found out what had happened, she made up her bouquet in a vase and brought it over to her memorial service, and it was really special. Very special.
8 weeks after the murders, California authorities, desperate for new leads, offer a $50,000 reward for any information on Lindsay and Jason's deaths. It appears to reignite the case.
We got so many tips on this case to the point where there was a room, binders full, whole wall full of it. And these are hundreds of people coming forward saying they saw them. Whether they did or not, you could never confirm.
The tips range from suggestions that the couple stumbled onto a drug smuggling ring to them being victims of the notorious Zodiac killer. Detectives follow up on every one, but they all come up empty.
It's tough because it could be anything. People lie, people see things differently. You never know what you're getting, but you still have to look into every single one because you never know which one's going to be the tip that has some validity to it.
Weeks, then months, then years go by with no new developments, and yet detectives refuse to file the case away as unsolvable.
You want to work a case involving young kids like Jason and Lindsay, who were still in touch with their parents. You want to bring them some closure, any closure. You want them to have some answers. So it was something that kind of consumes you. Even though it could sometimes be referred to as a cold case, it was never a cold case. There was always a detective assigned to this case.
We probably went out yearly to talk to the detectives, and they always gave us hope, and they always told us we'd find that person.
We really grew to love the detectives and appreciate them, and just saw their passion and their desire to find the killer.
I admired Kathy and Chris so much because they didn't obsess about it. I'm sure at times when they were alone that they wondered, would this ever be solved?
After 5 years, Chris and Kathy Cutshall get a glimmer of hope that they will finally get some answers.
There was a man who had been a fugitive, the main suspect in a 1972 killing on an island near Vancouver or in British Columbia. It was a similar kind of killing, 2 young people on a beach who shot in the head.
After those murders, the suspect, Joseph Burgess, had vanished.
What happened in summer of 2009 was that this man turned up. He got in a shootout with sheriff's deputies in New Mexico and was killed in that shootout, along with the deputy that he shot.
Although the 2 homicides occurred 40 years apart, Since Burgess had made his way to the U.S., detectives pursue a possible connection.
They had his DNA, and so we tested that DNA. And it didn't match with what we had.
That was a really frustrating moment for everybody involved who thought that perhaps they had gotten to the bottom of it.
Once again, the case threatens to go cold. Then, on Friday, March 24th, 2017, 13 years after Lindsay and Jason were murdered, a 911 call comes into the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, reporting a shooting. And it changes everything.
And I remember getting that call and just going, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for.
March 24th, 2017. The Sonoma County, California Sheriff's Office receives an urgent call about a shooting at the Gallon family home. When detectives arrive, they discover 36-year-old Seamus Gallon has been shot to death. The suspected killer is his brother Sean.
What occurred is Sean was at home. His mom was home. Seamus was home as well. Sean was angry at his brother, Seamus, for whatever reason. I don't think we'll ever truly know. He kept a rifle at the time in his vehicle, and he brought it upstairs and pulled the trigger, let out a volley of shots, hitting Seamus.
The suspect's name has a familiar ring to investigators. Sean Gallon was the first suspect in the murders of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen 13 years earlier. Despite their suspicions, investigators could not find any evidence tying him to those murders. But there's plenty of evidence against him in this case.
There wasn't any good reason for it. And the day that he shot Seamus was just a normal day. Words were exchanged, and that was just all it took. Just an argument. He shot him point blank, and then he fled. They were able to track him down. There was a short chase. He was caught.
In my first interview with Sean, when he had killed Seamus, he confessed. It was clear. He described how he did it. It was a fully functional AR-15 style rifle. And he says he put it in full auto and pulled the trigger. I believe it was probably like 7 shots, the initial volley. The rifle stopped after that initial volley of shots. So he said he cleared it and then aimed at Seamus's neck and executed him right there. Once I got that out of Sean, then it was time to switch gears.
Now, Detective Horseman has the perfect opportunity to confront him about the 13-year-old murder.
So I asked him about the Jenner murders, and he denied it. He said it wasn't him. And I asked him, are you willing to take a polygraph? You know, clear your name. If this isn't you, this is the time. And he agreed to it. I remember when the detective was done with it, he met with me and the other detectives in our unit. And he said, "This is your guy." He had no doubt in his mind that Sean was lying, and it was him.
It's a stunning development. But polygraphs are not admissible as evidence in California courts. Sean's DNA does not match what was found at the beach, so the investigators know they need to find concrete evidence to prove his guilt.
We started brainstorming what we were going to do, and with the new crime, we could then write search warrants. One of the search warrants was for Facebook, and we delved into all that information going back years, private messages, group messages.
When detectives examine Sean's social media, they discover a trove of disturbing posts.
Sean Gallen had occult images on social media, posts on Satanism, that kind of thing.
They also uncover a private message with disturbing implications.
One of the private messages that we located was from one of his exes, and she had messaged him, maybe I should just go turn you in for that 50 grand reward, and why don't you go shoot some more people and try to get away with it? And at the time, there was only one case here in Sonoma County that had a 50 grand reward. And that was this case. So that stood out like, this girl, he told her, she knows, she's threatening this. This is our guy.
Detectives immediately track down Sean's ex-girlfriend. But 13 years after the murders, she's a long way from California.
She was now in England. And I said, if we can get to England and talk with her, maybe we can get her on our side and see if she'll help us.
Less than 24 hours later, Detective Horseman is on a transatlantic flight.
We get to England and to the hotel room, and I'm going through my phone, and I see I got a voicemail. I hit play, and it's somebody from the Sonoma County Jail, one of the correctional deputies there, saying, hey, Sean Gallen just passed us a note saying he's ready to confess to 2 murders. It would have taken us too long to get back from London, so I wasn't there for the interview. It was one of those things you can't wait. Somebody's ready to confess. You don't want him to get cold feet. There was something inside him that tormented him, and he knew he had to finally be out with it.
In a small room inside the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, Sean Gallen begins giving investigators a detailed account of Lindsay and Jason's final moments and what he did to them on Fish Head Beach on August 14th, 2004.
He was looking for wild boar to hunt when he sees these people.
For whatever reason, he didn't like these 2 people camping on the beach, or maybe he thought of it as his beach. I don't know. But what he did say was that he had made a decision that he was going to kill them. And he said that he had to force himself to kill them. He had been hearing voices that were torturing him, that were tormenting him.
He finds sleeping on the beach what ends up being Jason and Lindsay.
"13 years after Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen were shot to death on an isolated California beach, Sean Gallen is finally confessing to the murders.
He said he approached them from the south. He's walking on the soft sand, so they had no idea he was there.
He said that he had shot Jason first, and that Lindsay had woken up, very briefly and made a sound of some sort, and then he had shot her and killed her.
He said that after that, he collected the casings. He claims to have hung around them for a little bit of time, and ultimately he leaves.
These victims never knew or met Sean Gallen. They hadn't done anything to him. They didn't have anything that he wanted. It's just utterly inexplicable. The only explanation that I can offer is that Sean Gallen just enjoys the act of killing. My take on it is that once he realized that he was completely busted for the murder of his brother, he understood that he was done. he was going to prison probably for life. When he confessed to the murders, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a false confession. He told them that he had put shell casings from the murder weapon into a soda can and tossed it into some blackberry bushes near what had been Sean Gallen's father's house.
Investigators head to the location, hoping the evidence still exists there.
They found this soda can from more than a decade before that had these shell casings that completely corroborated what he had told them. We also charged him with felon in possession of a firearm, possession of ammunition, charges that would put him in prison for life.
When he was arrested, all these things come flooding back and all these memories. It was a relief that everybody had been waiting for years, but also a shock. It's a really long time to have anyone not know why they died or what they died from. I think the hardest part was that it was a mindless crime, that it didn't have a reason, that it ended two people's lives who were phenomenal.
Finally, we knew it would happen. We were happy. We were sorry that another person had to be killed for this, but it was like, well, here it is. It all came together.
Ultimately, Sean did plead guilty to the murders of Jason and Lindsay.
He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms plus 94 years on top of that.
He will serve the rest of his life in prison.
I miss the spontaneity that they had, that they were up for anything at any time. Always excited about life.
We were very good friends, and I miss that. She had the best hugs. I miss her smile. She had a great smile, great outlook on life. Both Jason and Lindsay, they could teach me so much.
Knowing how happy they were is comforting, very comforting. And knowing that they fell asleep that night on the beach and they woke up in heaven.
They were happy together and loved each other and loved being together, and God took them home together.
Videotaping myself getting cake. Because I'm just that good.
Yes. If you please know where my daughter is, any information, please.
We definitely had to entertain the possibility that this young girl was abducted and taken quickly out towards I-95.
My heart couldn't take it. It was horrifying.
She was able to provide investigators with 2 photos of Danielle.
In the reflection of the eyeglasses, you can see other people. So it's actually an incredibly valuable piece of evidence.
Now this is starting a lot of more questions than answers.
What police find is a shovel, and there was something on there that looked like blood.
"15-year-old Danielle Locklear is enjoying a yearly tradition. Spending her summer with her grandparents and extended family in the quaint town of Hope Mills, North Carolina.
Danielle and we was really close. My name is Darlene Hegel. Danielle Locklear is my granddaughter. And she cared a lot about me, and we did a lot of things together. Go down to the church. The church was always in it because that's, what we did.
My name is Chena Papa, and I am Danielle's aunt. She loved to make videos and tutorials. Anything that involved some creativity, she can do it. She really loved baking cakes, that's for sure. Well, I was like, wow, how'd you learn how to do this? And her cakes were delicious.
I'm videotaping myself eating cake. Because I'm just that fabulous.
Yes. It was just like a little home away from home. She had a good time coming to visit for the summer.
That summer, Danielle meets a young man who is familiar to her family. 17-year-old Jamichael Malloy.
We've seen him over the years at the church. I've seen him when he was a kid, and then one day you see him, he's like a handsome teenager.
Once I seen that they seemed to be getting along well and liking each other, I felt that, this is a good thing.
When the summer comes to an end, it's time for Danielle to return home to her mother, Rona, and stepfather in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But there's a problem.
When it was time for her to go back, she didn't want to go back because she had a love interest. And she was like, please, Grandma, I want to stay.
Adding to Danielle's desire is the fact that her mother and stepfather are going through a painful divorce. So Danielle's mother agrees to let her stay in Hope Mills.
She came to live with us, and we were all open arms. She enrolls in Southview High School in Hope Mills, which is like right behind our neighborhood.
While Jamichael starts his senior year 14 miles away in Fayetteville, Danielle settles into her freshman year.
I met Danielle when she had just came to the school, and we just clicked instantly. Danielle is the most kind person, very outgoing. She could make a friend instantly. You could definitely spot her from a crowd. That was what all guys talked about in school, was how beautiful she was. But she was very much in love with Jamichael. She really thought that was it for her.
Later that school year, on the morning of Tuesday, March 11th, Danielle's grandmother and Aunt Chena are preparing to go out of town, leaving Danielle with her grandfather for the night.
It was kind of a busy morning for myself and my mother. We were about to go to Atlanta, Georgia for a doctor's visit, and Danielle usually is out the house by 8 o'clock in the morning, rushing off to school.
But that morning, Danielle is running late.
I remember looking at her, and I said, okay, bye, Danielle. She said, bye, Grandma. And I just seen the side of her face, and then she was gone. I had no idea that was going to be the last time I would see Danielle.
That evening, hours after Danielle returned from school, at around 9:45, she asks her grandfather if she can run a quick errand.
He said he remembers seeing her come up beside his shoulder and say, Papa, I need to take this binder to my friend up the street. Is it okay? He said, okay, yeah, just come right back. Just simple as that.
But an hour later, Danielle hasn't returned home.
The grandfather said that he's calling the phone, she's not answering, going to voicemail, so he starts driving around Hope Mills looking for Danielle, and he can't find her. The grandfather said that he hesitated calling the police because he always believed that you had to wait 24 hours to report someone missing. Finally, at 3 a.m, he gave up, went back to sleep, hoped that by the morning she would have come home.
When he wakes up, he begins to panic.
I got a phone call down in Atlanta from my husband, and he said that it's been a while now and she never came back to the house. I'm all nervous at that point, so we started getting our things together real quick to come back home.
Danielle's grandmother instructs her husband to call the police and then rushes to return to Hope Mills.
When we reach Hope Mills, the police are already there.
I'm Detective Joshua Hamilton, and I was assigned to be the lead investigator on the Danielle Locklear case. The grandfather was questioned by responding officers. So Danielle was said to be going to Alexis, who's a friend of hers she goes to school with. She was taking a book to drop off at her house.
But before investigators head to Alexis's house, Aunt Sheena reveals that she knows where Danielle may be. Her hunch stems from an odd encounter she had with her niece 2 days before she went missing.
It was becoming dark, and Danielle is running past the driveway toward the door and caught me off guard because she's never really out at nighttime. And I said, well, where are you coming from? Out of breath she was. She's like, oh, I'm coming from the back of the neighborhood. There's like a creek back there, and all the kids have been trying to get me to go hang out. The first thing that comes to my mind is this creek area. Maybe she's hanging out back there or something.
Officers did respond down to the creek with Sheena. They canvassed that area with her. We did not know at the time. That's where a large group of teenagers would congregate.
I'm seeing some kids' notebooks back there, just like things where you could tell teenagers had been back there hanging out.
However, there are no active signs of Danielle or anyone else. But as the group are leaving the site, Danielle's Aunt Sheena spots something.
And I look down and I see her night sock. Little fuzzy striped gray and black and white sock. And it's balled up. And I know it's hers because, I bought these socks. And I tell the police, I said, this is something that she wears around the house.
It's weird that this particular sock would be found at the creek, especially if it's something that Danielle would only wear at night. Which brings up the question, had Danielle been to the creek that night she disappeared?
Danielle's inner world revealed.
I remember her texting me in gym class, and she just started bawling instantly.
She's really distressed about this, and she had a lot going on for a 15-year-old.
And classmates point the finger at a former student.
The other kids had told the police she had rejected him and that maybe he had something to do with her disappearance.
She seemed like a goody goody, and good goodies haven't got to have no snitching.
The day after 15-year-old Danielle Locklear goes missing, while searching a creek, her aunt discovers a sock that Danielle only wore at night.
We treated it as an item of evidence and secured it.
The family then makes a painful call to Danielle's mom.
We called my daughter, Rona, while she was still at Myrtle Beach. Told her that Danielle didn't come home. And she said, "What do you mean she didn't come home? What do you mean, where's she at?" All this kind of stuff. And so everybody was dumbfounded.
You can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't think. Now, there's so many different things that could have happened to her.
By the time we were looking for her, she could be anywhere.
Danielle's mom rushes to Hope Mills, while police visit Alexis, the friend Danielle told her grandfather she was visiting the previous night.
Alexis told investigators that Danielle had not come to her house during the nighttime hours the night before. Her friend was not even aware that Danielle was coming to her house, which kind of shocked us. Now we don't know where she went.
Detectives wonder, why did Danielle lie to her grandfather about where she went that night? Alexis goes on to tell police that she did spend time with Danielle earlier that afternoon, at a place now familiar to investigators.
She had seen Danielle the day before at the creek during school hours.
So, quickly found out that she actually skipped part of the day and went to the creek. So now this is starting a lot of, more questions than answers.
Alexis was able to provide investigators with 2 photos taken from the creek the day before. Danielle seemed to be enjoying herself. She was smiling. These images were, final images of Danielle that we're aware of.
As I'm looking at pictures of Danielle, she has some glasses on. If you look, there's four people in the background.
In the reflection of the eyeglasses, you can see other people. And it just takes a matter of moments to figure out who those people are. So it's actually an incredibly valuable piece of evidence.
Investigators consider if the afternoon at the creek is somehow connected to Danielle's disappearance.
Establishing what exactly transpired at the creek was super, super important. We had to figure that out pretty quick.
Detectives then set out to identify and interview all of the teens that were present. One of the first they interview is Danielle's friend, Caroline. She tells them that 2 days before her disappearance, a heartbroken Danielle shared some stunning news.
I remember her texting me in gym class, and I went to go see her, and she just started bawling instantly, which is not her characteristic at all. She told me about Jamichael, and that he had cut things off with her, and that she was really upset. And she started asking me about the creek and where I go when I skip. And I was like, "Do you want to see it?" And then we went down there and we just joked around for a little bit.
That evening, Danielle encountered her Aunt China when she returned home. The next afternoon, the day Danielle went missing, she and Caroline stealthily returned.
The next day, we spent the day there. I remember it being sunny and warm. There's probably at least 6 kids down there. We had laid out beach towels and blankets. She was just laughing the whole time. I didn't think she was sad anymore at all. That was the last time I saw Danny, my final day with her. I just feel like that was a good day to have with her. If I had to pick a last day with somebody, that was a good one.
Danielle was able to burn up about 1.5 to 2 hours of her day down there at the creek with her friends before she kind of snuck back onto the school property and walked back in undetected.
After school, Danielle went home before heading out later that evening. Detectives wonder if Danielle didn't visit Alexis that night. Did she meet up with Jamichael?
Once we established that she did have a boyfriend, we wanted to talk to him as well.
Jamichael tells the police that Danielle was having such a hard time with the breakup that she kept bugging Jamichael, and he said he had to block her from his phone, so he hadn't talked to her in days.
Detectives then ask where he was on the night Danielle went missing.
Jamichael tells investigators that he was at home with his friend, Dominic. Those two were tight. I mean, they were like brothers. But he hadn't left the house, and he was there all night. Investigators asked for consent to do a forensic analysis of his phone and the contents within it. He surrendered that phone to us with no problems. That extra step to reassure us that he didn't know where she was.
As they sift through the messages on Jamichael's phone, they make a shocking discovery.
Several days before she went missing, she was saying to him that she had taken a test and was in fact pregnant with this baby.
Messages concerning her pregnancy raised a lot of alarms. We had to assume that she is pregnant, and we're looking for a pregnant teenager.
It was obvious that there was a lot of anger, and Jamichael didn't believe that Danielle was pregnant. So this seems to be something that they were fighting about.
Did Jamichael's anger spill over the night Danielle disappeared? When they locate the texts from that evening, however, they discover something else.
Police learned from Jamichael's phone that he was home that night, texting with other girls. Looks like he was home all night, as he said he was.
To Danielle's family, the turmoil in her personal life comes as a surprise.
So I didn't really hear anything about any of the pregnancy scare stuff. When I found out that she was thinking about being sexually active, I immediately took her to the doctors to get her put on birth control. But she didn't really seem like there was that much that was bothering her.
In hopes of unearthing new clues, detectives file a subpoena for Danielle's cell data. Then, they retrace her steps from the day she went missing, starting with her walk from school to the creek.
Investigators discovered the camera aiming at the sidewalk, which leads to the trail to the creek.
This surveillance video of Danielle is proof of what Danielle was doing that day before she disappeared.
In March, a few days before Danielle disappeared, she and her aunt threw a birthday party for her uncle.
My husband was turning 65, and I got together with Danielle and asked if she would bake the cake. And she said yes. She was really excited about that. So the day arose. Everyone was enjoying themselves. My husband loved the cake. The cake was delicious. And really, it just breaks my heart because that was the last time that I seen her.
Two days after she is reported missing, investigators review security footage of Danielle on the day she vanished.
It was certainly of interest to investigators at that point because it was earlier in the day that she went missing later that evening. Danielle was seen walking toward the creek. It captured her stopping, putting her head down, kind of putting her head in her hands as if she may have been upset or thinking about something. And then she moves out of view.
Police are also learning that she is absolutely heartbroken about her breakup with Jamichael Malloy. It's possible that Danielle may have thought that she was pregnant. She had a lot going on for a 15-year-old.
I don't think we'll ever know exactly what was going through her mind, but, it's obvious something's there.
Then investigators get another critical clue when the location data from her cell phone comes through.
When we started to receive those records to see what her movements were the night she went missing, it showed her in that area of her residence, and then it showed her heading towards I-95. It started going north, roughly about 8 miles before it cut off.
Danielle's phone last pinged a cell tower at 10:40 p.m. Investigators combed that area for Danielle's cell phone, to no avail. But the location data presents them with a new theory of her disappearance.
It told a story of leaving Hope Mills in a very, very fast manner. Faster than one could walk. She had to have been in a vehicle. At that point, we definitely had to entertain the possibility that this young girl was abducted walking down the road and taken quickly out, towards I-95.
We've gotten the federal authorities and FBI involved. We were able, from social media, from pictures of the family, to get descriptions as well as photographs of Danielle out there and really try to push them out.
Just a few days after she's reported missing, Danielle's disappearance makes national news.
Basically, every news channel, everywhere you could possibly put news that was Danny's face.
I want my baby to come home. That's my baby girls. No one knows what a mother goes through when I feel like my heart is ripped out. If you please know where my daughter is, any information, please. Tell her to come home. Or Danielle, if you see this, come home, baby. I love you.
Danielle's ex-boyfriend also joins the efforts to find her.
Jermichael was right there in the huddle with us, looking for, making the plan, where we're going to go, what we're going to search, who we're going to talk to next. We did everything within our power, making phone calls, calling friends, making flyers, sending faxes. Our attitude was that, do whatever's necessary to find her. And we're praying and hoping that you find her alive.
While the search for Danielle continues across the United States, detectives continue to interview classmates who were at the creek the day Danielle disappeared. And one of them points to a former student with a questionable past.
Investigators learned about Derek through another individual. He told us about Derek, how, he potentially had something to do with her disappearance.
The other kids had told the police that Derek maybe was interested in Danielle and that maybe she had rejected him and that maybe he had something to do with her disappearance.
Detectives' suspicions are raised when they learn that Derek lives near the area where Danielle's cell phone last pinged.
We took him to the sheriff's office voluntarily. We felt that several things he told us, they didn't sit easy with us.
Investigators are questioning a former student who lives in the area where Danielle Locklear's phone last pinged.
The best way to describe Derek is he's kind of like the school truant. Has been expelled a few times, but he still hangs out with the kids from the high school. And Derek was at the creek on the day that Danielle was there.
Let me ask you something. Was Danny hot?
Well, yeah, she was a very beautiful girl.
Was you infatuated with her? You kind of have like a secret crush?
No, she seemed a little too preppy. She seemed like a goody-goody. And honestly, I don't hang out with goody-goodies. Good Giddies have a bad habit of snitching. I ain't gonna lie. I do illegal things, and I know I do.
Derek was unique in the fact that he was very outspoken. He admits to not liking her, that she's too preppy. That's not his cup of tea. He made it clear that, he does illegal things. We don't hear that very often.
Let's put Derek's posturing aside. Let's look at the facts. Where was Derek on the night that Danielle disappeared?
When questioned on his whereabouts during the hours of 8:30 p.m. to 12:30 the next morning, Derek says he was at his father's house.
Around 8:30, my dad left to go to a pool tournament. I stayed on the computer, job searching. Between Facebook, job searching, and TV, that's what I was doing all night.
He was alone for those hours, which is also very suspicious. There's no one else in the home with him.
Derek is certainly someone that has raised investigator suspicion at this point.
Detectives then turn to the location of the final cell ping from Danielle's phone.
But we know where Danielle's phone was. Okay, what area her phone was. It's out there around your house. In that general area. Okay, I'm not saying it's right at your house, but in the general area. And that was Tuesday night, 22:45, which would be 10:45. I'm asking you, was she alive when she left that area out there around your house?
I have no idea, I didn't see her.
You're telling me you have no knowledge whatsoever of what happened to Danielle Locklear?
No, sir.
But police aren't convinced Derek is telling the truth.
Police decide they're going to take this a little bit deeper. Police get a search warrant and they search Derek's house.
We do a search of that property based on the information provided.
While examining the property, investigators immediately observe something alarming.
What police find is a shovel. And there was something on there that looked like blood.
The shovel appeared to have what we thought was blood on it. So, we ran some tests on it.
But when the police took the shovel in for forensic examination, they determined that it was not blood on the shovel.
So at this point, there was nothing tying Derek directly to Danielle's disappearance.
People tried to say that Derek had done something to her or hurt her in some way. A lot of very mean things that he did not deserve.
We reached a point, where we couldn't rule him out, but we couldn't corroborate what he's saying to us. We didn't have enough to keep moving forward with him. So we regrouped and started to pick up where the evidence left off again.
Then, on April 2nd, 22 days after Danielle disappeared, an off-duty police officer discovers something concerning off a bridge about 20 miles outside of Hope Mills. He immediately calls 911.
Is there a deputy close by with a pair of binoculars so I can make sure there's not a body in the water?
On April 2nd, 3 weeks after Danielle disappeared, an off-duty cop calls 911 for assistance.
Is there a deputy close by with a pair of binoculars so I can make sure there's not a body in the water?
Okay, I just got up with Edward 6. As soon as he cleared his call, he can be en route to you.
Once he got the binoculars, he was able to see that it was, in fact, a body in the river.
Detectives race to the scene.
When the body was pulled from the water, I recognized personally the shirt that was on the body as being the shirt that Danielle was pictured wearing at the creek. It was heartbreaking. We knew at some point we were going to have to tell her family that The worst outcome possible was now a reality.
When Danielle's body was recovered from the water, there was a cinder block tied around her waist that was tied with yellow rope. There was also another cinder block tied around her feet, again with yellow rope.
The cinder blocks were of the coarse gravel. They were definitely an older cinder block. They weren't like the crushed fine concrete you see typically in today's cinder blocks.
Once police receive a positive identification from the medical examiner, they notify Danielle's family.
It was very hard. It was hard. It was a hard day.
At that point, my heart couldn't take it. I couldn't take it. It was horrifying.
I just kept thinking, this can't be real. Like, this is like the worst thing that could possibly have happened. I just felt like I could never really believe it in my mind that she was gone.
As Danielle's family and friends begin to mourn, detectives get to work. The medical examiner concludes that Danielle had been strangled. And they find something else.
It also noted that there was a sock that had been stuffed into her mouth.
It's a match to the night sock Aunt Chena found on the creek trail weeks earlier.
The sock was listed as part of the death. The medical examiner could not rule out the actual mechanism for her death. Was it strangulation or was it the sock? Only thing they could say was it was from both.
The other important fact that the medical examiner is able to provide is that Danielle Locklear was not pregnant. It's possible that Danielle may have thought that she was pregnant at a certain time, but she was not pregnant when she was killed.
Detectives theorize that Danielle was murdered at the creek, and her body was disposed in the river about 20 miles away. To investigators, the location of the disposal site seems significant.
The South River, where Danielle was found, is a little under a mile from Jamichael Malloy's residence.
Despite his alibi, Jamichael is now the focus of the investigation.
It only added to my suspicion, based on everything to that point, that he had everything to do with this, and we were going to chase down every bit of evidence we could to make sure that we could hold him responsible.
Detectives prepare a search warrant for his house and bring him into the station for questioning.
Jamichael willingly comes in. His mother goes with him because she's now really worried.
It don't look good. That body, really, how did it get down there? Somebody could be trying to frame you.
They have to prove that.
Oh,
Love you too much. Okay.
Investigators press Jamichael on his involvement in Danielle's murder.
You think I'm a smart kid? Yeah, I do think you're a smart kid. Why in the world would I put her down the street and around the corner? Because more often than not, that's what people do. You know, based on my experience, they tend to not want to leave their comfort zone. Y'all seen y'all ping my phone and seen I was at home, so.
Investigators then inform the Malloys that officers are searching their home.
We have cooperated to the fullest. But now that you're searching my house, we're going to use solitary.
Yes, ma'am. You ready for my home?
Yes, sir. Right now.
While Jamichael is being interrogated at the police station, other officers are searching his property. And they find something unbelievable. Cinder blocks that match exactly to the cinder blocks that were tied around Danielle's body. At his home, in the soil, they find the indentation, the marks left from the cinder blocks that had been there and had been removed. Then they find rope, very similar to the kind that had been tied around Danielle's body. Obviously, cops are trying to get a confession out of Jamichael. They're putting the evidence on the table and saying, Jamichael, it had to have been you. The cops think this is the aha moment, but Jamichael doesn't crack. He doesn't confess. He is so calm.
Jamichael's best friend, Dominic Locke, is also brought in for questioning. But he refuses to speak with detectives.
Everything points to Jamichael, but we don't have the probable cause to go ahead and charge him. We wrapped it up, let him go on his way, and told him we're going to see you again. This ain't over.
"4 days after denying he had anything to do with Danielle's murder, Jamichael Malloy tells police he's ready to talk again. Jamichael explains that on the night of the murder, he and his friend Dominic drove to Danielle's home.
I was like, alright, I'm ready to get this pregnancy thing done. So I took my wallet and I threw it against her window.
To get out of the house, Danielle told her grandfather that she needed to drop off a notebook at her friend's house.
She came out and everything. She got in the car and we went to the creek. We sat down and talked for a while. And she was cursing me out, still being mean to me. And I'm just trying to shove it off. And she was supposed to take a pregnancy test in front of me. I told her, no matter what, if you're pregnant or not, I'm going to do what I got to do. If this is my kid, DNA proven and everything. But I'm not going to be with you. And that's when she snapped on me. She punched me in my face. She slapped me and jumped on top of me and got all over me and stuff.
According to Jamichael, in the middle of their alleged fight, he snapped.
All I remember was I grabbed her. I was choking her. I blacked out. Next thing I knew, she wasn't breathing. And I freaked out.
Jamichael says he goes up to where Dominic is, waiting by the car, and explains that he's just killed Danielle. And says, Dominic, you've got to help me. Dominic and Jamichael walk back down to the creek where Danielle's body is. And they start to pick her up and carry her back.
The sock that Sheena found likely fell off along the way. According to Jamichael, Dominic shoved the remaining sock into her mouth.
Why would you do that? She was making a noise. Yeah, but if I could nurse and nobody would hear it. Yeah, me and Dominic got in the car. Yeah, drove back to my house. I went and got the rope and the cinder block. And tied her up, put her in the car, threw her over the side into the river.
With his confession on record, Jamichael Malloy and Dominic Locke are arrested and charged with second-degree murder.
It was terrible. I mean, to get that information, and we had been searching about a month, having Jamichael with us during those searches, saying, have you heard anything? Oh, I pray that she's okay, and we'll find her. All of these things, all the time knowing exactly where she was.
Jamichael betrayed us as a family. He knew that she was precious to us and that we would never stop looking for her. To go and pick her lifeless body up and toss her in the river like she was nothing. Not one time did you say, oh my God, I made a terrible mistake. I've got to call for help.
In a tragic twist, investigators suspect that Danielle lied to Jamichael about being pregnant in order to gain his attention. But one question remains. The texts from Jamichael's phone that placed him at home the night of Danielle's murder.
A specialist in phone analysis was able to uncover that Jamichael had used a texting app where you could schedule your phone to send out text at a future time. And so he had left his phone at his house, but yet his phone was still sending text to friends as if he was still at his house.
In May of 2016, Jamichael Malloy pleads guilty to second-degree murder. At his sentencing, he turns to speak to Danielle's heartbroken family.
There's nothing I can do there or I can say that's going to bring her back. But I do want to apologize for the actions that I made.
He is sentenced to 25 to 31 years in prison. Dominic Locke pleads guilty to accessory after the fact and is sentenced to 6 to 8 years behind bars.
You never get over something like this. You learn to live with it. My sister is never going to be the same. Danielle was more than a niece to me, and I'm just thankful for those years I shared with her.
Years later, friends and family still cherish their final moments with Danielle.
Janie was just a great person to be around, and I don't think I can ever forget the person she was. You'd think after years and years, and it being high school, it would fade a little bit. I always thought it would. I would get older and I would get over it. But Danny was too much of a good person and a bright person and such a positive energy in life that you can't forget that.
When she left the house that day, she said, "Okay, bye-bye, Grandma." I said, "Okay, bye-bye." It was real quick, like that. And as she was going out the door, she's like, "I love you, Grandma." I'm forever grateful to her. And I thank the Lord every day for letting me have that moment, that last moment with her. And I always love her.
She loved a party and she would dance.
When she went to the bar that night, that was the last time we seen her.
She's riding into the night with a mystery man on a motorcycle.
We knew we needed a break. Who is this individual?
I know my daughter. She would contact me.
Is she alive somewhere needing to be rescued?
We started to find more what we believed were human remains.
Somebody knows something and you're not telling, and we need to know.
October 12th, 2012. Jacksonville, Florida. For Sherry Prather, life can be summed up with 3 words: family, fun, and Harleys.
My mom, she was definitely a free spirit. She wasn't one for rules. She did have a lot of friends from like a lot of different backgrounds. Mom was very attracted to Harleys. She loved motorcycles, so anytime like she's seen one, she wanted to go for a ride.
She loved a party and she would dance. And she loved to sing karaoke. She could sing really good. She had a beautiful voice. She sounded just like Stevie Nicks. She was not just my daughter, she was my best friend.
Norma Ellis is a young single mom when her daughter Sherry is born.
They laid her on my chest. It was just a shock, like our heart became one. And like they just beat in rhythm together. That just stays with me all the time because it was just like a jolt. It was like we just become one.
Norma strives to give Sherry everything she missed in her own upbringing.
I didn't have a real good childhood. We didn't have a loving family. And I wanted her to be raised to know what it felt like to be wanted, big Christmas and stuff. I tried to cram all that in for her. Anything, if she said she wanted it, if I had to work 2 shifts, I was going to get it for her.
Sherry's childhood is filled with love, but she also has to grow up fast.
She was very caring. If I was in bed sick, she'd come in there every 15 or 20 minutes and put a cold rag on my head, and she always took care of me. I didn't have any help but her, and she was young. We had the tightest relationship, and it was my birthday. She brought me roses. Yeah, she brought me roses.
Like her mother, Sherry falls in love at a young age, and by her early 20s, she's married with 2 baby girls.
That's her, holding one of the kids. The young mother, that's her husband. That was her husband. It didn't last too long.
I think at the time, like when she had us, she was so young, she wasn't ready to be a mom, so she kind of grew up with us.
After 5 years of marriage, the relationship falls apart, and Sherry finds herself a single mom. She moves in with Norma for support.
It was just the 4 of us, all women. We were one. She was close to her girls. She liked the freedom to come and go, and she knew that I was going to be there to take care of the girls.
But after her divorce, despite her mother's support and unwavering love, Sherry hits one rough patch after another.
I've watched my mom go through like a lot of bad relationships where they felt like they could put their hands on her and stuff like that. They tried to control her, which only made her pretty much rebel even more.
Through years of abuse and struggle, Sherry turns to alcohol and drugs to numb the pain.
Her addiction was probably her biggest battle. She battled with that for a very long time.
By the time Sherry is 30 years old, she manages to fight off her demons.
She was clean and sober. She didn't even drink or anything anymore, but she was still a free spirit.
In 2012, after years of sobriety, Sherry is now a 43-year-old mother of 2 adult daughters. Her youngest, Mandy, is 22 and still lives with Sherry and Norma. By now, Sherry has been clean long enough to feel comfortable hanging out with friends at a local bar without drinking. And on October 12th, she makes plans to meet up with some friends at a place called Boots and Bottles.
It's a little hole in the wall, more like bikers and like the older type of crowd.
She said, I am going to walk. I said, get in the car. I would take you rather than you walk because it's a real bad road. And it was dark. It was 10 or 11 o'clock.
So me and Grandma actually took Mom up there. When she went to the bar that night, she was supposed to just hang out. And that was the last time we seen her.
By the following morning, when Sherry hasn't returned home, her mother grows concerned.
I knew that she was missing because she did not call me. I knew something was wrong the minute she didn't come home.
When a day passes with still no word from Sherry, Norma and Mandy decide to act.
So Monday I told Grandma, I just have a feeling like we need to go to the police station. But because of her background and how old she was, they really didn't want to file a missing persons report. So of course, my grandma being who she is, there was an uproar in there. And they kept trying to tell me, she's a grown woman, we're not filing. I said, oh yeah, oh yes you are.
Missing person cases, sometimes you hear, you have 24 hours to be reported missing. That's not really the case. Oftentimes, it's the circumstances surrounding the individual. Is this uncommon for them? Or are there foul play, signs of a struggle, something like that?
With Norma's insistence, the police take the missing persons report. But they are not overly concerned yet and don't immediately begin an investigation.
We don't quite have enough to where you feel confident that something did occur that would cause the missing persons team to react immediately as opposed to not.
But 3 days after Norma last saw Sherry walking into the Boots and Bottles bar, she's convinced otherwise.
You try to go to sleep and wake up in the morning and put your feet on the floor and you think, oh gosh, that was a horrible dream, and you start to walk down the hall and you say, oh no, she's not in there. I know my daughter and I need some help. Somebody's holding her captive or she's laying hurt somewhere. Something is wrong.
A relentless mother drives the investigation forward.
I checked all the tips, pleaded on the internet, please come forward, please come forward.
It was really incredible to see the mother's strength and will to just keep going.
But it's a long wait before investigators can confront their prime suspect.
We were fairly confident that a confession was not going to occur with this individual because he has told so many lies.
He stands up the minute they walk out of the room and he bangs his head on the interview table.
Three days after Sherry Prather was last seen, her mother Norma is still struggling to have Jacksonville police take her daughter's missing persons case seriously.
They kept saying, she's an adult, we can't. I said, I want it filed. I will go downtown to whoever I have to. I know my daughter. She would contact me.
And eventually, Norma's entreaties pay off. On October 15th, detectives start their investigation at the bar where Sherry was last seen.
Boots and Bottles is a small establishment. It's just an old-fashioned place to grab a beer in the neighborhood of Ocean Way. But it was popular at the time.
It's a small little dive bar is how I would describe it. Particularly people that ride motorcycles would kind of hang out there.
Sherry Prather was a regular there. That's what we had heard from people. It was kind of the gathering spot for her and her friends.
Investigators first talked to the bar's owner to see if he noticed anything unusual on the night that Sherry vanished.
We're looking, what first-hand knowledge does he have? What second-hand information does he have from his employees or people that were there? So he did tell our detectives that he knew Sherry Prather was there. She was there with a group of friends, and that's all that he could really provide. He was able to say, hey, these were some other people that may have been here at this time. That gave us a direction to go in.
Investigators also search the bar itself for any clues.
Detectives search Boots and Bottles for any type of physical evidence, including video footage, anything that could show Sherry.
But unfortunately, the bar has no surveillance cameras, and detectives can find no other evidence of any value. They know they need to find potential witnesses, so they begin reaching out to the bar patrons mentioned by the owner, and any other regulars they can find who might have been there the night Sherry disappeared.
They said she was there with her friends, and that's when she decides to leave. Little did they know that was going to be the last time that they saw her.
Sherry left in the wee hours of the morning toward closing time. And we did find there were some local gentlemen that openly articulated as a motorcycle club.
They were motorcycle gang members, the outlaws.
And we knew the members of that club didn't even want to speak to the police.
The detectives learned that the biker gang is listed by the FBI as an organized crime ring, linked to illegal activities, including drug trafficking, prostitution, extortion, and money laundering.
So we made contact with those members. Eventually we knew much of that would be a dead end. We weren't going to get much information from those folks.
Their presence at the location from which Sherry disappeared is worrying, but police find no evidence connecting her and the biker gang. Days pass with no new leads, and the case seems to be hitting a wall. At the same time, word of Sherry's disappearance catches the attention of local news reporters.
At the time, I was a field reporter, and police did not have a lot of information to go on. So certainly, it was a mysterious case. I wanted to talk to Norma. I went to her house and knocked and knocked and knocked, and eventually she came to the door, and you could tell she was disheveled. She doesn't know where her daughter is. Is she alive somewhere needing to be rescued? Obviously, she's going through all of these emotions. And there's a lot of family members that would say, no, we're not able to talk right now. We're too distraught. There's people that would slam the door in my face. Norma came out and did an interview with me.
That was my only child. She was my whole life.
So now she's pleading that someone knows something.
Every night I hear her calling me to unlock the door to let her in, and I can't take it anymore.
I remember she showed a picture of Sherry, and that was the first time we really got to see a picture of this woman who was missing, besides what had been released by police. She had a flyer, and she did everything she could.
If you don't get out and help, your case is not going to get solved. It's just going to be shoved to the bottom. I went out, everybody at the bar gave me information. I checked all the tips. We pleaded on the internet, please come forward, please come forward. We did a lot of posting on Facebook, just about every day, pleading, any tip. I just want some information.
If there was a 1% chance that Sherry was alive, Norma was going to use that 1% chance as motivation to keep going. And it was really incredible to see the mother's strength and will to just keep going.
It's been 3 weeks since Sherry Prather vanished from a Jacksonville bar called Boots and Bottles. Missing persons detectives are failing to gain traction in the investigation.
Obviously, detectives are going to have to keep some things close to the vest. They were struggling, and they were frustrated too at the time. They were having trouble finding leads. So, it did become a whodunit.
But Sherry's mother, Norma, and her daughter, Mandy, refused to let the investigation wither.
Me and Grandma actually drove around and went into a lot of bad houses and bad areas trying to find her just to see if they've seen her, if they talked to her.
Been told to people at gas stations that look like dopers. You know, you seen my daughter? I never was afraid.
She's in high crime areas. She's talking to people that could be perceived as dangerous. She's doing everything to find her daughter, and she wasn't going to stop.
We put up posters every morning. Please help. There was a lot of witness. Somebody knows something and you're not telling, and we need to know.
I vividly remember begging with her to please stand down and not place herself in a situation where harm could come to her. I spoke to Miss Ellis, reassuring her that we were doing everything we can and that we weren't forgetting her case.
We did advise her numerous times to let the officers and the detectives in our office conduct the investigation, all the while knowing that I would probably be doing the same thing she was doing if I was in her shoes.
"30 days into the investigation, police finally get their first solid lead. On November 12, 2012, Teresa Lennox, a childhood friend of Sherry's daughter Mandy, contacts detectives, claiming to have information.
Can you state your name? My name is Teresa Lennox.
Investigators bring her in for an interview.
When I turned on the news and I saw the missing persons report for Sherry Prather, I broke down. I got really upset. I was crying loudly. My uncle came out of his bedroom. That's my Uncle Jack. Uncle Jack. Yeah.
Teresa explains that she has been staying with her uncle for a few weeks while she looks for an apartment. He is a regular at Boots and Bottles.
When Jack came out of his bedroom, he asked me what was going on. And I pointed at the TV, and he said, well, who is that? I said, well, that's Sherry Prather. I said, that's my, really good friend of mine's mother. And he goes, really? He said, that's the one that they've been putting up pictures of all over town. I said, yeah, it is. He said, well, I might know what happened to her. And he said, well, all I know is that supposedly this biker guy killed her over money and dumped her on Braddock Road. That's what he said. That's all I know. And he left it at that.
Detectives press Teresa for the name of the biker. She insists she knows nothing. She says she hasn't seen her Uncle Jack for several days, and investigators are unable to locate him. Meanwhile, another team from the Missing Persons Unit is deployed to Braddock Road, the place Teresa claims Sherry's body was dumped.
It is in a very rural part of the city of Jacksonville. It's a heavily wooded area. It's not a well-lit area. It's a local road.
The investigative team searches through rough terrain, pulling back branches and combing through tall grass. They find bone fragments, but at first glance, they appear to be from an animal.
There were animal carcasses, and that particular location of the woods is known to be a dump site for hunters. They dump deer, wild hog carcasses, and there's quite a few scavengers out there. It was at that time that we made the decision to contact one of our dog handlers who has a dog that specializes in locating human remains.
The highly trained dog gets to work, scouring the discarded bones spread across the field. Then, he signals his handler that he's found something.
The dog located what they believed were human remains. He immediately contacted the on-call homicide team, which was my team, and we responded to the scene. We started to find more what we believed were human remains scattered throughout the woods. There was a potential body that could be Sherry.
Days after Sherry Prather was last seen, a tip leads detectives investigating her disappearance to a rugged piece of land in Jacksonville, Florida, where they have found human remains.
We blocked off a large section, shut that area down, and then brought in teams of evidence technicians, or crime scene unit detectives, to assist us in literally combing the entire woods, from the roadway all the way into the woods, which took several days. We located some clothing, some shoes, small piece of jewelry. With great assistance from the canine, we were able to recover all human remains.
The Office of the Medical Examiner here in Jacksonville were able to locate some living x-rays of Sherry Prather and compare them to the deceased remains of Sherry Prather, and those bones did confirm it was in fact her.
We were all actually at my grandma's house, and they called, and they told us over the phone that they had found remains.
I felt relieved that they had found her, but the thought of animals eating her and taking her was the hardest part for me to take. I thought I was going to die. And I thought, this can't be real. This can't be real.
Once they confirmed that it was her, just the thought of it was just pieces, wasn't even like all of her, is I think what truly broke our family.
Homicide detectives take over the case, but they know they face a tough task. Given the condition of Sherry's remains, determining how she died will be difficult.
We decided early on to reach out to an expert, a forensic anthropologist. We knew she was an expert at analyzing bones and determining how they were broken, if they're broken, whether they were shot with a firearm, whether they were stabbed.
The forensic anthropologist gets to work, decoding the secrets Sherry's remains hold.
While that is going on, we're sending detectives to start backtracking. We already know she went missing at Boots and Bottles.
Investigators know Boots and Bottles has no surveillance cameras, but they hope a nearby business might. They go back and canvass the strip mall. They discover that a nearby cell phone store does have a camera, and it points in the direction of the bar's parking lot.
When we watched the video to see if there was anything, it clearly showed Sherry Prather walking out to an individual who was standing by a motorcycle. She gets on that motorcycle, and then they leave the establishment with Sherry on the back as a passenger.
Detectives know they are witnessing Sherry Prather's final moments.
It was mysterious. It's not great video. It's not high quality. It's dark. It would be difficult to identify anyone's facial features from it, but it shows she's riding into the night with a mystery man on a motorcycle leaving a bar.
It's their first look at the person who may be responsible for Sherry's death.
Is this some sort of a motorcycle gang? Is there some bigger criminal activity here? Are we dealing with a serial killer? There's definitely an uneasiness in the neighborhood. And this is not a neighborhood that's immune from crime.
As detectives try to identify the man in the video, they get word from the forensic anthropologist that she reached a conclusion on Sherry's cause of death.
When she found a semicircle beveling in a vertebrae, that absolutely confirmed to us that Sherry Prather was in fact shot.
But detectives have nothing pointing to the identity of her killer.
We knew we needed a break. Who is this individual?
Detectives turn to the public for help, releasing the video of Sherry Prather's final moments to the media. As the video hits the airwaves, tips start pouring in, and one call in particular stands out. It's from a woman named Samantha Johnson, who claims to know the identity of the man seen with Sherry on the video.
We had her come down to homicide.
Today is November 14th, approximately 6:26 p.m. And can you just state your name for me?
Samantha Burleson Johnson.
You saw a news story regarding a missing person, right?
Yes, sir.
And on that news story, there was a video of a man and a woman on a bicycle leaving somewhere.
Yes, sir.
Did you recognize the person on that motorcycle?
Yes, sir.
And who did you recognize that person to be?
Johnny Wayne Johnson.
Surveillance video has revealed Sherry Prather's final moments, riding on the back of an unidentified man's motorcycle. Now, a witness has come forward claiming to know the identity of the biker in the video.
And who did you recognize that person to be?
Johnny Wayne Johnson.
Samantha Johnson is Johnny Wayne's wife. They're still currently married, but not living together. They're separated.
In addition to identifying her estranged husband, Samantha tells investigators that she also has information about what happened to Sherry that night.
Okay, what do you say about the girl that was on the back of the motorcycle?
He took her to somewhere off Trout River Boulevard, Braddock Road, and dropped her off.
And at that point, he shot her?
Yes, sir. He said he didn't have enough time to move the female, so he just dragged her into the woods.
Johnny had a conversation with her as to what occurred that evening, proved that he in fact killed Sherry, and more importantly, before her body was ever located. He gave very specific information of where he placed the body, and she was able to provide that information.
Detectives begin a deep dive into their new prime suspect, and it's eye-opening.
He had built a character of himself with the local community, and they were truly scared of the guy. But we worked with our intelligence unit, which is the unit that oversees and monitors all the various motorcycle gangs in and around the region, and we had no indication that he was a gang member. The guy had told quite a few stories to build up his presence.
Detectives find Johnny Johnson's address and rush to the location, ready for anything. To their surprise, he calmly welcomes them.
He admitted, he picked her up at the bar, and he took her and dropped her off at a house. We actually got him to show us the house that she was dropped off at.
But detectives are suspicious of Johnny's version of events, and when they interview the owners of the house, they hear a different story.
We actually were able to determine that nobody ever came by their house. They don't know Sherry Prather. They don't know Johnny Wayne Johnson. That simply didn't occur.
Detectives suspect that Johnny Johnson killed Sherry Prather, but his estranged wife's statement isn't enough to arrest him. They need solid proof.
In a case where you have very little physical evidence, there's no DNA, there's no murder weapon, there's not an intact body, There's no eyewitnesses. We needed more evidence. We asked Sergeant Farhat, his team, to continue to pursue evidence.
That is difficult. Letting them walk out that door makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up when you're like, my God, we know this guy did it. Let's be patient. Time's on our side. We're going to continue and work this case to the very end.
But weeks, then months go by without the homicide team able to find the proof it needs.
Successfully convicting him requires us to prove our case beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. So we continue the investigation to the frustration of us all.
Then, Samantha Johnson, also frustrated that her estranged husband is still a free man, agrees to wear a wire to help with the investigation.
It was a detective that was investigating a missing persons case.
Yeah.
Who discovered it off of a tip.
But isn't that the place that you said all this happened?
Like I said, I ain't just.
But what really happened?
It is what it is. Right now I don't want to really get into it until it's over with, if you understand what I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough.
Samantha is unable to provoke a confession, but she does have another lead to offer the investigators. She tells them she's learned that Johnny had a girlfriend named Jordan Paris, and she's heard through the grapevine that she may have helped him dispose of Sherry's body.
We actually brought her downtown to the homicide office and conducted an interview.
Johnny, who is John Wayne, correct? Johnson. Yeah, her boy. Yes.
She was not completely forthcoming. She did admit pieces that Johnny went out that night. She knew something happened, but was terrified to tell us.
I'm afraid of what will happen if he knows I don't. He just kept bringing stories up.
Of what?
And some other girl had gotten smart with someone of power.
Mm-hmm.
And they were either going to take care of it or the girl boyfriend had to take care of it. That was a member of the club.
Take care of us and what?
Beat her.
But investigators continue pressing Jordan for information, confronting her about claims that she helped move Sherry's body.
Obviously, information that was provided that said that you assisted him in moving a body or bodies with your PT Cruiser is inaccurate?
What? No.
Okay, so it is inaccurate.
Yes.
Okay. Your vehicle has never had any human remains in it?
No human remains, no.
We took possession of her car, got a warrant, and we went through every square inch of that car forensically. There was no physical evidence in that car that indicated that Sherry was ever in that vehicle.
Jordan Paris is cleared of any involvement with the disposal of the body, and detectives are no closer to finding the physical evidence they need. Now, they're forced to wonder if their main witness against Johnny, his estranged wife Samantha, is telling them the truth, or if she has ulterior motives for implicating him in a murder.
They were in the process of separating. Was she fabricating these types of statements by him? If she's jealous of the new girlfriend. We knew we needed a break. We needed a witness or witnesses that sure may have been close to the defendant, but had no motive to lie.
The detective said, we've got one shot is all we have, because they could not find the gun. To put this murder charge on him, We have to have more evidence. And I said, I cannot take this anymore.
The break they need eludes the detectives, and for 4 years, there are no new leads. Then, in 2016, a man named Mike Carroll calls police, saying he's been too frightened of Johnny Johnson to say anything, but has finally found the courage to speak up. He tells investigators that on the night of the murder, he received a phone call from Johnny.
It was the wee hours, 4 or 5 in the morning, and Johnny Wayne Johnson told him he messed up and he needed some help cleaning something up. He told him he had dumped Sherry in the woods, that he wanted help finding ways to hide the remains. Of course, Michael Carroll refused.
So that was the critical piece, the final piece.
After 4 years investigating the murder of Sherry Prather, authorities have finally found the witness they need. On November 18, 2016, armed with the account of a man who says he was asked to help dispose of Sherry's body, investigators bring Johnny Johnson in for a critical round of questioning.
Our goal is simple, and that's to get a confession. So we brought him in to homicide.
Johnny, do you remember a detective talking to you 4 years ago about the girl that was missing from Boots and Bottles?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I took him to where I dropped her off at. Yeah.
Do you remember her?
Yeah. I've been keeping up with this story in hopes that y'all catch the person who does it.
Now, we were fairly confident that a confession probably was not going to occur with this individual because he has told so many lies, but we still tried.
Not being honest, Johnny, but you got to explain your side of the story.
And I have been. I dropped her off on Trout River.
But you didn't.
I did.
You took her to Braddock Road.
No, I don't know about Braddock Road.
Yes, you do, Johnny. It's right there. It's right there. You've been down it several times.
As the detectives started presenting him with the case and questioning him what occurred, they said, look, we know you're lying.
I done told you.
That's not the whole story.
It is the whole story. That's all I know, and I didn't do it. You can believe what you want to believe. I did not do it. I swear on my father's grave.
It's denials. I didn't tell him that. I didn't tell my girlfriend that. I didn't tell my wife that version. I didn't tell her anything. It was a multitude of denials throughout his interview.
Can I go home?
No, you cannot.
Why is that?
Because I'm charging you with murder.
I didn't do murder.
Well, I'm charging you with it, and we can prove it, Johnny.
No, you cannot, because I didn't do it.
He stands up the minute they walk out of the room, and he bangs his head on the interview table.
Oh, bud.
Detectives call EMTs to check Johnson out. Once he's given the all clear,
You are good to go.
they charge him with murder. As prosecutors prepare to bring Johnny Johnson to trial, his lawyers approach them with a plea offer.
We reached that plea agreement of 20.4 years in prison to second-degree murder, which is what he was charged with. We took that offer to the victim's family, and as you can imagine, the family was very happy to get him to finally acknowledge legally in a courtroom that he was in fact guilty.
I looked at Mandy and she said, Grandma, as old as he is, he got 20 and a half years, and he was supposed to have already been sick. She said, he'll never live to come out of there.
The only thing that I felt was I did feel a little relief knowing that he wasn't out there and that he couldn't do it to anybody else and ruin anybody else's family. But at the same time, it's like you put my family through a lot, and in our minds, like the sentence that he got wasn't enough. I do remember her ambition and her fight. Like she never gave up. It didn't matter, and she's very headstrong. So when she has like something in her head, like she's gonna get to that point, no matter what it takes her.
This one was just a few days before she disappeared because she had just gotten her glasses. We're in the backyard. She never wore glasses before. She said, "Oh, I'm not going to wear these." I said, "Well, if you want to see." I didn't know this would be the very last picture. She was just sweet, and that's why I miss her, because we did so much together. I didn't want anything to happen to her, and I would give anything if it had happened to me instead of her. I wish that 1,000 times.
It's the last time you see pictures of all of the family together.
When that family was entering the house, he heard the gunshots.
911. Someone just shot our neighbor. Who shot them? We don't know.
There was a small gun safe. It had been pried open. Was this just a home invasion that went bad?
Sit there and think, what kind of relationship did they actually have?
This is not the all-American family that everybody might think they are.
In my opening statement, I told the jury panel, you're about to hear a tale of subterfuge, deception, and greed.
December 2003, Sugar Land, Texas. Kent and Tricia Whitaker and their 2 sons, Bart and Kevin, have called this affluent suburb home for more than a decade. It's a perfect fit for their upscale lifestyle.
Sugar Land was an amazing place to grow up. It was a community focused on faith, focused on friendships, relationships, a really tight-knit community. The Whitaker family was a pillar in the community. I attended a private school there in Sugar Land, and Kevin did too, and we were fast friends. The Whitaker family did so much together, whether it be fishing trips or camping trips, times on the lake. Kent and Tricia maintained that really sweet closeness with their kids and that high level of trust and communication. They loved to experience life as a family.
I was the Whitakers' next door neighbor. They were very normal, kind, empathetic people. They seemed not troubled, unburdened. Life is good. That was my general vibe.
To friends and neighbors, the Whitakers seem to have it all. A happy family where 19-year-old Kevin looks up to his 23-year-old brother, Bart.
Kevin was very humble. He was a man of integrity, of character, incredibly honest. The guy was smart, very engaging. Bart was a little bit more quiet. You didn't know necessarily what he was thinking like you did Kevin.
Kent Whitaker is the co-owner of a thriving construction company. A hard worker, his financial success means he can provide his family with everything they might want. His wife, Tricia, is a dedicated part-time elementary school teacher.
She loved and knew every kid in every class every single year. And the interesting part was that she didn't have to work, right, because of Kent's job. but it told you a lot about her heart.
On December 10th, 2003, Kent and Tricia plan a special night out for the family to celebrate Bart's graduation from Sam Houston State University. At dinner, they present their son with a $4,000 Rolex watch as a graduation gift.
I know what a Rolex costs, and he bought a Rolex as a graduation gift. That's not an everyday thing.
Kent is a proud dad and takes photos so they'll have a permanent record of Bart's achievement.
I've seen this. I've seen those. Sitting there smiling like that. Very happy.
It's the last time you see pictures of all of the family together.
Someone just shot our neighbors. Who shot them? We don't know.
I was there when they died. That was real, and I can't necessarily make sense of what I saw that night. I was sitting at my computer. I heard gunshots. I immediately dart out the front door. I get about midway down our sidewalk, and I see Kent Whitaker laid on his back. You could see his body lit up by their front porch lights. And he was saying, Brandon, we've been shot. Call 911.
What kind of injuries do they have? I don't know. They just been shot.
Brandon's father, Cliff Stanley, rushes to the house and discovers that Kent Whitaker has been shot in the chest.
My dad runs out and starts rendering aid. Multiple trips, back and forth with house, just doing what we can. It felt awful. It was gruesome. It was a horror movie.
While police race to the scene, another 911 call comes from inside the Whitaker home. It's Bart Whitaker.
I've been shot. Where is your wound? In the arm, my shoulder. I think I can't with my arm. Okay, who else has been shot in the house with you? It's my mom and my dad and my brother. Oh, God, I can't. I need you to hang on, Bart. I've got help on the way, okay? Do you know who shot you? No. Dark in here. Okay, when he left, Bart, did he leave out your back door? Yeah, I chased him that way.
When I arrived on scene, it was very chaotic. There was ambulances, there were multiple police cars, fire trucks, a helicopter.
When detectives arrive at the Whitaker home, they find Kent Whitaker hanging on to life.
EMS personnel had went in. They had taken vitals for Kevin Whitaker, and he was pronounced deceased. Patricia Whitaker was flown by helicopter to a Houston hospital, and we were told she died en route to the hospital. Bart Whitaker had been shot. He was being medically treated by EMS. 2 people were shot. Another 2 people were dead. So we knew within the first hour that it was a double murder.
Kent Whitaker and his son Bart are rushed to a nearby hospital. Detectives quickly arrive to get a statement from Bart, since he is the only one conscious. Bart tells them that the family had just arrived home from their celebratory dinner when he realized he forgot something.
Bart Whitaker had reported that he had actually walked out to his truck to retrieve a cell phone. But when the rest of the family was entering the house, there was a guy that was inside that house. So he heard the gunshots. Bart reported he had chased the shooter through the home and out the back of the house. And he had actually been shot by the offender. We had had several home invasion robberies. So the thought initially was, are they connected? Was this just a home invasion that went bad?
But something doesn't quite add up.
Probably the biggest thing that stuck out to us was every drawer in the rooms were pulled out exactly even with each other.
So this burglar, basically purposely, I'm going to pull out every drawer about this, so it'll make it look like I was trying to look for stuff. But you weren't looking for anything. You were just pulling out drawers. The officers immediately knew that.
To the investigators, the scene seems to have the hallmarks of a staged burglary. Nothing appears to have been stolen.
There were electronics, there were computers, there was TVs. There was a Rolex watch that was found. There didn't appear to be anything taken. So things didn't add up exactly to being some type of burglary.
Burglars come in and leave within minutes. They smash everything they can, pick up everything in 3 minutes. That's what happens. They don't sit there and wait for people to come home and walk in through the front door and shoot them. It just doesn't happen.
While investigators try to make sense of why the Whitakers were gunned down, they realize they have another pressing matter in front of them.
We had a vague description of a dark figure that ran up through the back of the house. And now this person is loose in the neighborhood. So are they on foot? Did they get picked up by a car? Did they drive a car there and now they've driven away? Or are they hiding in someone's backyard and they've already shot 4 people? The public's in danger, and we were in a very tough spot. Where is he? Or where could he be?
Police try to unravel a bewildering attack.
I crawled around for a bit. I really didn't know where I was hit. It just felt wrong.
And discover details of an inconceivable plot.
I was at the police station late one night, and there was a knock on the back door.
Do you have any idea who did the shooting?
Who did the shooting?
All the puzzle pieces just immediately connected, and realizing, gosh, the worst possible explanation for this is true.
As police in Sugar Land, Texas begin investigating the shooting at the Whitaker home, news travels fast in the tight-knit community.
I got a call from a friend. He's like, hey, there's been an incident. There's been a shooting. It was Kevin who had passed away, and Trisha had passed away as well. It was the most horrendous thing possible. And so at that moment, there's so much happening, you can't reconcile anything. You can't process, you can't grieve. It's just all hell's broken loose. December 10th, 2003 was a day that is burned in my memory.
I don't feel like I ever did process it. I just kind of did what I had to do and kept moving forward. It was just shocking. Sugar Land is incredibly safe. It's the kind of place where you don't even hesitate to take a walk at 3 a.m. They definitely made me more aware of my surroundings, of what's capable from people.
You know, the first question is what happened? What went down? And then why?
Detectives are urgently pursuing those answers at the Whitaker home. As they search through the house, they find a weapon and 4 empty shell casings.
There was a gun that was found in the kitchen area, which was odd. It's probably the murder weapon. Usually we don't find that the offender leaves the murder weapon on the scene. But it was an advantage for us because now we had the possibility maybe for fingerprints, for DNA, for other types of evidence that could be recovered from this gun. In one of the upstairs rooms, nothing in that room appeared to be touched at all, except for there was a small gun safe. It had been pried open. You could see pry marks around the frame. It was empty.
The gun safe was a small little box, maybe a foot by foot, tucked into a hidden area. Whoever did this knew what to look for and knew what was in the safe.
The discovery leads the investigators to question how familiar the killer was with the Whitaker family and their home.
It was odd that someone had targeted this small gun safe out of this whole big house. Why weren't the computers disturbed? Why weren't the TVs taken? It just didn't make sense. So our job was to try to find out how many people were involved with this.
Most people are killed by people who know them. 78, 80%. It's very strange you have stranger and stranger. It just doesn't occur that much.
Three days after the murders, police are still scouring the evidence for leads on a motive or suspect when Bart Whitaker is discharged from the hospital. His father, Kent, is still in intensive care.
Not this hard.
Despite the trauma he's just endured, Bart agrees to assist detectives by returning home to relive that terrifying night. The investigators hope he can remember something that will lead them to the killer.
It's 7:54 p.m. Officer DuBose is going to be playing the part of the suspect, and I'm turning it over to Bart for his direction of everyone.
We went through the crime, trying to figure out exactly what happened.
I was here when I was calling 911. I might have fallen forward. Okay. Right after I was shot. Okay. I crawled around for a bit. It felt... I really didn't know where I was hit. It just felt wrong. I mean, I couldn't move my arm. I tried to push off the floor, and my arm wasn't working. I thought maybe I was hit in the side because it burned. So he went out the back door? Did you see him leave that back door? No. Okay. Yeah, I just don't remember.
They had him reenact the scene. And people generally, when it comes to crimes, they try to be very specific. Like he was standing here or something like that. And his was, well, I don't remember. It was this way, or it could have been this way.
When the shot was fired, did you see any flashes of light? I don't remember. Do you ever physically make contact with the suspect? I don't think so. Okay, I don't know what I was trying to do. I know I was just trying to grab it. I think I got to him.
He was very vague about things you think he would remember.
At that point, we had no leads. We had just a family of 4 that had been shot, 2 that were deceased.
They came home at the wrong time, in the wrong place. That's the story that you typically hear, right? That's the initial reaction. It's just incredibly unfortunate, right? How does this even occur in Sugar Land?
Detectives investigating the murders of Tricia Whitaker and her son Kevin in Sugar Land, Texas, believe their killer was familiar with the Whitaker home and may not have been trying to rob them.
So we started doing a background on the family. The domestic relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker was nothing but perfect that we could find out. And every friend or family that we had interviewed said they had a great relationship.
Detectives turned their focus on the Whitaker's murdered son, 19-year-old Kevin.
Was he targeted for some reason? Was he involved in something that he shouldn't have been? But he had no criminal history. As we were interviewing friends and family members, Kevin seemed to be a good kid, and he was a tragic victim.
Detectives also take a closer look at the other Whitaker son, 23-year-old Bart, who was wounded in the attack and is their primary witness. It was his graduation from college that was being celebrated shortly before the murders.
Bart was supposed to graduate that coming Saturday. So we contacted Sam Houston State University, and we were told he wasn't graduating. As a matter of fact, he was a freshman as far as their academic rating, and he had like a 1.4 GPA. So we had a story that he was giving us that wasn't matching reality.
He was lying about going to school for the past 3 years. And so they zeroed in on him.
It sure seemed at the time it was too coincidental that this big family event had occurred, and then they get home from this event and they're all shot. So was Bart involved with what had happened? Was he not involved? We had to gather evidence.
Investigators want to keep what they've learned about Bart Whitaker under wraps until they can either clear him or tie him to the murders. But a local newspaper covering the case has also learned of his deceit and runs the story. Bart's father, Kent, still recovering in the hospital, is stunned and can't understand why Bart would lie.
Kent's response to it was, why didn't he tell us this? I just wish he would have, let the music stop and confess this to us.
How could you not know your kid's not going to college? So you sit there and think, what kind of relationship did they actually have?
"6 days after the murders of his mother and brother, Bart and his father joined more than 1,000 friends and family at the funeral.
Gosh, that was a brutal day. I remember seeing Kent and Bart sitting on the front row and watching them, and what are they thinking? What are they feeling? Just gutted for them and heartbroken for them.
We had multiple detectives that were there. We had actually had some recording devices that were placed around the area because there could be comments made. Because sometimes the parties involved go to the funerals, but we didn't find anything at all.
As the family mourns, Sugar Land police continue to focus on the questions that have arisen about Bart.
We had discovered that Bart had some involvement with the criminal justice system already. We had found a 2001 incident report from the Waco Police Department that there was a female subject that was in an apartment with Bart Whitaker, and she overheard him talking about wanting to kill his dad. We had an officer that actually went out to the house. It was early in the morning and made contact with both Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker and told them why he was there. But they didn't believe Bart would be involved with something like that.
Later on, when the father finally talks, he says, we're just talking about the Menendez brothers. It wasn't anything serious at all. And so the father just believes him. And that's it.
In the days after the murders, life seems to return to some semblance of normalcy for Bart and his father, at least from the outside.
And they were still living in the same house together where two of their family members died, and the suspicion is growing that Bart was involved.
And it wasn't life as normal, but from the outside, it was a dad and a son who had gone through this tragic event, locking arms and leaning into one another.
We had to determine how much are we going to tell Mr. Whitaker, because his life still could be in jeopardy with Bart still being around. And we didn't tell him everything. We tried to be as honest as we could with him.
There were maybe a few times that Kent would say, hey, they're still trying to find the guy, or they're still looking into it.
Mr. Whitaker was in a very hard position at that point. Slowly, kind of the bow's starting to unravel here, where there's information about his only living son that, at least initially, isn't adding up.
Police know Bart Whitaker didn't pull the trigger, but they strongly suspect he is involved in the murders of his family.
Bart was very manipulative with friends, and that was information that we received as the investigation went on. That's when the intensity ramped up into trying to identify who does he currently hang around with and where were they at on December 10th of 2003. This is not the all-American family that everybody might think they are.
Detectives in Sugar Land, Texas suspect Bart Whitaker knows more than he's saying about the murders of his mother and brother, and in fact, may be involved in the crime. But they have been unable to find any solid evidence supporting their suspicions. Then, a week after the murders, as investigators contemplate their next move, an unexpected visitor drops by the police station.
The lead detective was at the police station late one night, and there was a knock on the back door. It was a gentleman by the name of Adam Hipp.
Adam Hipp tells the detective that he briefly went to college with Bart Whitaker, and he wants police to know that Bart's statement about killing his parents in 2001 was far from the joke he claimed it was.
He said, listen, Bart Whitaker talked to me about killing his family before, back in 2001.
Adam tells police that Bart claimed once his parents and brother were dead, he would receive all of the family's assets, including their home and life insurance policies worth over $1 million. He says Bart offered him a cut if he would be his trigger man.
The detective had Mr. Hipp actually draw a map that showed where he was supposed to stand inside the house, and he would shoot the family members as they walked in. And that's exactly what happened on December 10th, 2003. Adam Hipp started working for us. We had him make recorded phone calls with Bart Whitaker to get him to talk about the crime.
Detectives coach Adam to tell Bart he knows he killed his parents, and then threaten to go to the police with this information unless he receives $20,000.
And that's when Bart Whitaker says, yeah, I can pay you. I can pay you some money, basically.
Bart never really came out directly and said, I did it, but there were enough indicators there.
In my opinion, we had probable cause to arrest Bart Whitaker on basis of what we had with Adam Hipp coming in. We did have that. Do we have enough to prosecute him and convict him? No. We didn't have any of the details.
But Adam Hipp's call to Bart points the investigators to someone else who may be able to help them build their case.
When Adam Hipp is on the phone, Bart Whitaker mentions Chris Brashear. And what is Bart Whitaker? Chris is going to keep his mouth shut.
Adam tells police that Chris Brashear is a former roommate of Bart's. Detectives track down Chris and bring him in for questioning.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you coming down. Yeah, man.
After establishing the relationship between Bart and Chris, detectives hone in on the night of the murder.
Do you have any idea who did the shooting?
Who did the shooting?
Yeah, any ideas at all?
And I mean, it's a pretty gross incident to me. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, it's kind of a blunt question.
Has Bart ever approached you about killing his family?
No.
He's never talked to you about that or anything like that?
No.
Never even joked around about it?
No.
So, did you go anywhere that night?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Went to, what's that? Hooters?
Hooters?
Yeah, that's right.
And it was you and Steven?
It was, yeah, Steven, his girlfriend, and myself, yeah.
Investigators believe that Chris Brashear is lying to them. they learn that Stephen is Steve Champagne, another former roommate of Bart's. And if Chris is providing Steve as a false alibi, detectives consider whether he might be involved as well.
Steve Champagne is enlisted in the Marines. We're looking at cell phone records, financial records. So who is communicating with who?
Police quickly locate Steve and bring him in for questioning.
Now, they say they don't know anything about it. They denied anything. So at least that's where they start.
Finally, as pressure grows, the story begins to change.
I think Steve Champagne, his conscience finally got to him. Then he let out a little information about when maybe I was involved.
Do you feel partly responsible?
Oh, yeah. Steve Champagne changed his story and confessed.
Steve tells the detectives that Bart convinced him and Chris Brashear to join a plot to kill his family, so he could inherit his parents' fortune. Steve admits he was the getaway driver, and Chris Brashear was the trigger man.
He had taken Chris Brashear over to the house, parked his car a street or two over behind the house. Chris hid inside the house and shot the family members as they walked in on December 10th of 2003.
Did Chris say where he found the gun in the house?
No, I remember hearing something about a safe or something like that, but I don't know for sure.
Who do you think is the most responsible?
Probably Chris for shooting him. I mean, Bart planning it, yeah.
The big piece of information, evidence-wise, that Steve was able to provide to us is they had a bag that had a lot of evidence from the crime. Walkie-talkies, water bottle, ammunition that they tossed into Lake Conroe.
This is a big lake, man-made lake. They throw that in there. Now, what would be the odds of somebody being able to find that?
Steve Champagne, a suspect in the murders of Tricia and Kevin Whitaker, claims a bag full of crucial evidence was tossed into Lake Conroe, 50 miles north of Houston, and agrees to take police to the spot.
The police department with their scuba tank, they go out and look for it. In water, you can't see your hand in front of you. They found the damn thing.
Inside the bag, detectives find the tool used to break into the Whitakers' gun safe.
They even found the pry bar, and they managed to match it up by the scrape marks. They even found the cell phone they were using. Now, you tell me what kind of police work that is. God bless.
There was DNA that was recovered. That was Chris Brashear's from a water bottle. There was ammunition that was consistent with the ammunition that was involved that killed the family. Tangible physical evidence that links these individuals to this crime.
With the evidence now in hand, detectives have what they need to confront Bart. But he's nowhere to be found.
Bart Whitaker's Tahoe was found abandoned in an apartment complex in Houston. Both of the doors were found open. We sent detectives to the scene. We believe he's on the run.
We just lost him. People don't run when they're innocent. They really don't. Flight is a very good indication of guilt.
Kent Whitaker told us that there was money that was taken from the house. So Bart had some money to survive. Our job was now to figure out where he was.
The news of Bart's disappearance is one more shock for his friends and family, already devastated by the murders.
That was the big kind of aha moment, was when Bart left. So that's really when everything, all the puzzle pieces just immediately connected. And I realized, gosh, the worst possible explanation for this is true.
It's too much to really break it down into a coherent single thought. Shock, disgust, and disbelief almost that someone could plot and plan out something like this.
Police send out a nationwide alert to be on the lookout for Bart Whitaker. With the cash taken from his home, he could be anywhere. Meanwhile, Steve Champagne and Chris Brashear are charged with first-degree murder for the deaths of Trisha and Kevin Whitaker.
These were kids that came from great backgrounds, but were manipulated by Bart Whitaker to kill his family. And they went along with it because Bart had promised them a cut in his inheritance. And he had told them that, hey, it's going to take a little while, but I am going to give you some money.
For months, there are no leads to Bart's whereabouts.
So we worked with Crime Stoppers to put out that we were looking for the whereabouts of Bart Whitaker.
There's a Crime Stoppers award of $10,000. If you get information that leads to this arrest, we'll pay you $10,000.
18 months after the murders, police get a call from a man named Rudy Rios.
Rudy Rios said that he had known Bart Whitaker and he knew where Bart Whitaker was because Bart Whitaker had assumed his identity and he went to Mexico.
Rudy Rios claims Bart paid him $3,000 to be transported to Mexico, and that Bart has been living there for more than a year.
Bart Whitaker shacks up with a female and begins a relationship with her.
Mexican officials agree to cooperate with American law enforcement. Almost 2 years after the murders, they track Bart down, and on September 24th, 2005, he is returned to the U.S.
We call up Ken Whitaker and said that he's going to be getting out of Mexico, but there was no deals made whatsoever. They just got him out. Put him back here and put him in jail. We had already made a decision. The only person we were seeking the death penalty was a mastermind, Bart Whitaker.
But Bart's defense attorneys work to thwart the possibility of a death sentence. At the heart of their strategy is Kent Whitaker.
Mr. Whitaker did not want the state of Texas to put his son to death, which is usually just kind of a reverse of roles where the family wants the maximum.
To forgive somebody of doing the most horrendous thing possible serves as a model of forgiveness. Something I think about all the time.
His standard was, I believe he's changed, and I'm going to forgive him. My standard is, he hasn't changed, and you can't forgive him.
All rise.
Bart Whitaker's capital murder trial begins on March 3rd, 2007, some 3.5 years since the killings at his family's home.
In my opening statement, I told the jury panel, you're about to hear a tale of subterfuge, deception, and greed, which will lead you to one conclusion, that Bart Whitaker had his family murdered. And that's the only conclusion he got.
Prosecutors put admitted getaway driver Steve Champagne on the stand. He explains how Bart outlined his murder for cash scheme.
The conversation was about when the family came back from eating dinner and Chris would be in the house and shoot them.
The jury hears that Bart staged a fight with the gunman, and they'd agreed in advance Bart would be shot in the arm to divert suspicion. The trial lasts 6 days before the case goes to the jury on March 8th, 2007. They deliberate for just an hour and a half before coming to a unanimous decision.
The guilty verdict was very quick.
Now the jury must decide whether Bart Whitaker should live or die.
Call your next witness. Bart Whitaker. He needs to be sworn, Your Honor.
Bart didn't testify during his trial, but now, in the penalty phase, makes a last-ditch effort to save his life.
Please stand before the clerk and be sworn.
Bart Whitaker has been convicted of murdering his mother and brother. Now he's trying to convince the jury not to sentence him to death.
When Bart Whitaker was testifying, I actually had the defendant admit that he had no reason to hate his parents, but he did it anyway.
The only people I've ever hated, and I know it was not for the right reasons, but the only people I ever hated were my parents and my brother.
The prosecutor confronts Bart with his family's final moments, the photos taken by his father at the celebration for Bart's supposed graduation. He tells the jury one photo from that night is particularly disturbing.
He shoots a finger at him while he's doing it. Now, some people don't make that much of it. I'm sitting there going, you understand something? He's shooting a finger at him knowing they're going to be dead. It's very chilling.
The jury deliberates for 10 hours before sentencing Bart Whitaker to death.
It's a hard question, and people have a lot of opinions about it because they're removed from it. But when you know the people and you've been involved with them, and definitely as intimately involved with this entire murder as I was, you see things a little different. Because I believe Bart should have received the death penalty.
Bart's accomplices agree to plea deals. Triggerman Chris Brashear is sentenced to life behind bars, and Steve Champagne, the getaway driver, receives a lighter 15-year sentence for cooperating as a key witness.
How do you even begin to broach that conversation with someone? Like, there's no icebreaker for, hey, will you help me kill my family? It's brought me to the conclusion that evil is real, very tangible, and it has a long plan behind it, and I truly think Bart was evil.
Over the next decade, Kent Whitaker remarries and builds a new life. He continues to fight to get his son's death sentence commuted.
Ken Whitaker never said he was okay with what Bart did. He always said he should be punished, okay? But he didn't like us seeking the death penalty. That was it.
When Bart's appeals are exhausted, his execution is scheduled for 6 p.m. on February 22nd, 2018. Then, with just 30 minutes until Bart is set to die, Texas Governor Greg Abbott grants him clemency.
And left, and I found on the news that they commuted to life.
I'll never forget the night that the news came out. I never forget that moment of seeing Kent break down. Man, it was over a decade of emotions. For me, I was on the side of commuting the sentence. Should he ever see the light of day? Absolutely not. That's a no-brainer.
One day Kent's gonna die. And Bart will have no one left fighting for him, talking to him, coming to see him. And he'll have to live the rest of his life suffering like that. So I think he would have gotten off easy with the death penalty in this regard.
Trisha was gold. I find myself getting emotional thinking back to her. She cared for us. She loved us. She was invested in our lives. I miss Trisha dearly. I'm gutted that Kevin is gone. You know, Kevin was not a typical 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old, right? He wasn't a typical high schooler. He was always wiser than us. There was something in the yearbook our senior year. It was most likely to succeed, most athletic. His was who was the best, most humble, highest integrity human being, and it was Kevin. I started thinking about where would Kevin be now? I think that's what I still probably grieve, is not having that friendship for life.
She slept good and that we can talk soon.
All you have is the lifeless body of a 22-year-old. Why does someone do this?
The most gut-wrenching part was seeing Heather's hand still grasping the sheet.
And I just remember screaming, "Somebody's killed my daughter."
You have to look at these videos and hopefully gain something from it.
I think everybody was crushing on Heather.
Who do you tell your secrets to? Now you tell your secrets to your cell phone.
It was one of the most shocking videos I have ever seen in my career. I was watching the final moments of the life of Heather Nicole Maples.
22-year-old aspiring college student Heather Maples is preparing to leave her hometown in Texas to pursue her dreams in Tennessee.
She loved the idea of moving to Tennessee. She just wanted to start over and do something different. My name is Jenna Holt Gomez, and Heather will always be my best friend. She knew what words to say to make you feel better. Literally 5 minutes of talking with Heather and you would forget that you're even sad about anything. And Heather was really good at helping people.
I am really sorry that I didn't send you anything yesterday. And I hope you slept good and that we can talk soon.
Heather Nicole Maples is born August 23rd, 1992, in Ocala, Florida, on the eve of a record storm.
My name is Jennifer Hunter, and I am Heather Maples' mother. Hurricane Andrew was just hours away, but I had a baby during a hurricane, basically. So she was known as my hurricane baby.
I met Heather at my elementary school in Dallas, Texas. I was actually a really shy, quiet, introverted girl. I was afraid to speak to people. Heather just completely brought me out of my shell. We both tried out for cheerleading. We were so excited and so scared, but Heather wasn't afraid of anything, and we made it.
In 2004, when Heather is in the 7th grade, her mom gives birth to a second child, Ryan. When he's diagnosed with a developmental disorder, Heather's focus turns to her family.
All of Heather's high school years were spent with Ryan, helping Ryan learn how to talk, learn how to walk. She just immersed herself with helping to raise and take care of Ryan.
When she's not caring for Ryan, Heather lives the life of a typical teenager.
We spent a lot of time talking about boys. We talked a lot about what we wanted to do with our future.
Heather had wanted to go to college. She was interested in pursuing a career. She had decided that she was going to be a counselor. She had always been that friend. She was that listening ear because she was such a compassionate person.
After graduating from high school, a friend of Heather's named Chaz unexpectedly calls and suggests she join him in Tennessee.
He told her that he was in Murfreesboro and that it was a great little town. It was also a college town, and that would give her a better opportunity to be able to go to school in a local place.
I remember she packed up her entire car, and I was so depressed that she was leaving, but I understood and I admired her courage.
In January 2015, Heather arrives in Murfreesboro, moves in with Chaz, and embarks on a new adventure.
It was a friend situation when she went, but I think it turned quickly into a boyfriend situation.
When Heather first moved in with Chaz, everything was okay. And so this was just a fresh start for her. My name is Kelsey Price, and I was Heather's best friend in the state of Tennessee. My first impression of Heather was, wow. I mean, I was in awe. She just gave off this vibe, this light about her. And I said to myself, this girl's going to be my best friend.
Kelsey helps Heather land a job in the offices at the Cove apartment complex, where they both live.
We worked hard, but we also had a lot of fun. We would go bar hopping, go to the mall, go shopping, get manicures, just the typical girly stuff.
While Heather is thriving with work and friends, in April, her relationship with Chaz begins to crumble.
Heather and her boyfriend, they split up, and he moved out, and she was able to keep her apartment, so she didn't have to move again.
And in early August, she phones her mother with exciting news.
She was on the phone with me, and all she kept saying was, "Oh my gosh, Mom, oh my gosh." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "I was accepted to college. I'm going to college." And I was like, "You're doing what?" She was so excited, and I was so happy for her because that was something that she did on her own. It was her proud moment.
A week later, Kelsey Price opens the rental office at the Cove apartment complex and notices Heather is late for her shift.
She had a tendency to, sleep in, and so there were a lot of mornings where I would have to call her. About 9:15, I'm like, okay, Heather's not here. So I call a couple times. I don't get any answer. I remember her saying, if I don't answer my phone, just come get me. So when I open the door, I see her mattress, and I see her laying there. And I'm calling out to her. I'm like, Heather, Heather. I walk over to her, and I notice that she has a top on, but nothing else. And I'm like, gosh, she really got on one last night. So I look at her foot. I tap it. I'm like, Heather? And when I tap it, I realize it's dead cold. I slowly start to back out of the apartment. I was like just breathing and thinking like, what the hell is going on? I called 911 and they say, what's your emergency? And I say, I think there's been a homicide here.
I'm Detective Sergeant Tommy Massey with the Murfreesboro Police Department. I made my way over to the apartment complex and met with Kelsey Price, who was her friend and also a co-worker of hers. When I arrived on the scene, they'd already established a crime scene, had it roped off. I could see the body of Miss Maples across the bed. Obviously, she was partially nude. You could tell there was some visible trauma to her person. I immediately met with Detective Maples, the first detective from our unit to respond.
My name is Detective Larry Maples. I was a detective that assisted on the Heather Maples case. There was clear evidence of a sexual assault with semen, with hair, blood,
Her hair was fairly blood-soaked. We were able to note that there was some cast-off blood on the wall behind the mattress. Obviously, she had been struck on the bed, and then whatever object was used to strike her had, delivered blood to the wall.
The most gut-wrenching part was seeing Heather's hand still grasping the sheet, where you could tell that she died, and that she died a pretty horrific death.
Why does someone do this? As the lead investigator, it's very imperative to gain as much information as quickly as you can, because at that time we know nothing. All we have is the lifeless body of a 22-year-old girl.
Detectives search for clues in Heather's final moments.
With a crime of this nature, it was very conceivable that this was going to be a little more on Heather's private life.
Friends become suspects.
There was no forced entry to the door, so it didn't appear to be a random act.
And a window opens to a horrifying world.
It was one of the most shocking videos I have ever seen in my career.
When investigators discover 22-year-old Heather Maples murdered in her own apartment, they begin processing the scene.
There were several identifiers on Heather's body that were significant to us. There was, semen. There was a presence of hair we believe was not Heather's hair.
As forensics begins processing evidence for DNA testing, investigators make another discovery.
To the right of Miss Maples, there was a bloody fingerprint at the top of the bed that was pristine. You could not have taken ink and rolled that fingerprint and had a better print.
There was nothing consistent with that fingerprint to lead us to believe that it was Heather's, nor was there any conceivable way that her hands would have been placed there.
Investigators process the print to compare to potential suspects and to submit to a national fingerprint database. And soon, they make another discovery.
We were able to recover Miss Maples' cell phone at the scene.
Without a passcode, however, they can't open the device. As they set out to gain access to the phone, they observe something else.
We also noted that the windows were closed or locked, so the only way in was through that one front door. So no one forced their way inside, so it didn't appear to be a random act at that point.
Heather's body is transferred to the coroner's office for further examination. With the support of Heather's best friend, Kelsey, Detective Massey then embarks on a harrowing task.
One of the most difficult things to do is the death notification to someone's family that their loved one is deceased.
I wanted to be the one to tell her. I wanted it to be from somebody who loved Heather and cared about her. Well, I called and I just said, "Jennifer, are you sitting down?"
I remember her just telling me that Heather's gone. And I was like, where is Heather? Because I knew Heather was supposed to be at work. And then she said, "Heather is dead." I just remember screaming, "No, somebody's killed my daughter." But it wasn't real. It didn't seem real.
In his conversation with Jennifer, Detective Massey learns that the last time she saw her daughter was 6 days ago, when they spent the afternoon together in Texas.
She just called about a week or two before and said, "Hey, I've got tickets. I'm coming home for this weekend." It was great to see her. Heather and I were together. I dropped her off at her friend's house, and I gave her a hug and a kiss and told her I loved her. I had no idea that that was going to be the last time I was ever going to hold my daughter.
Back at the crime scene, Massey speaks to Kelsey about Heather's living situation. and discovers that her relationship with her ex-boyfriend Chaz has been tumultuous.
There had been allegations of abuse. I would hear her telling me about how he's got anger issues and he was abusing her.
It was a pretty scary thing because she called me. She was really upset and she didn't know what to do. I told her to leave and come back home. But she was determined to really make something of herself.
And there were often times where I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to have to go over here and intervene? But I helped her get a restraining order. I pretty much just took her under my wing from there on out.
He becomes somebody we wanted to have a conversation with about her death. Did something trigger him? Was this an act of aggression? And those are some things we wanted to know.
Before police can track down Chaz, something unexpected happens at the crime scene.
A young man came just about bursting through the crime scene. His name was Michael, and he was very determined to either get inside that tape, get inside that scene.
It's not uncommon in some cases that you will have suspects come back to the scene and interject themselves into the investigation.
Michael also shares an alarming piece of information.
The interesting part was that he had Heather's keys. No one forced themselves into her apartment, and she's dead. So certainly that's somebody we want to have a conversation with, and we got him back to our offices pretty quick.
He seemed pretty upset and despondent over the fact that his friend was deceased.
How do you know Heather?
I met her at the bar.
This is going to be rude, but I got to ask it because that sometimes details are important, sometimes they're not. The first night you met her, did you have sex with her?
I did not. I've never had any contact other than a hug. I've never even kissed her.
So you've never had sex with her?
No, ever. Okay.
Michael may have had a little crush on her, but at the same time, he had a girlfriend, and I don't know if he ever acted on any of his feelings.
Michael then reveals that before Heather was murdered, he spent much of the evening with her.
What was the story on that?
Yesterday, she asked me if I was off work, and she said she was hungry. I was like, cool, let's go to Old Chicago. Went to Old Chicago.
According to Michael, after dinner, he went home, while Heather went to a local bar with friends. But later that evening, she reached out for help.
She called me at 11:40.
So 11:40 she calls you?
Yes. And she tells me that I need to come to the bar. She really needs me right now. There's people hitting on her and she's really upset. And I was like, okay, I'll be there.
We learned from Michael in the interview, there was a situation where she was being, if you want to call it, harassed by the young man by the name of Artavio.
He was following her around and touching her, and I was like, man, why don't you leave her alone?
Michael had some concern about because he felt like he was being a little too, I guess, pushy with Miss Maples that night in the bar about trying to maybe have some advances toward her.
Shortly after the incident, Michael suggested taking Heather home.
We walked out the door. She's like, hey, I want to handle bar. I'm hungry. Will you take me there? I said, sure. She orders biscuit, gravy, eggs, 2 eggs, and sausage. And we sat there. When she was done, I drove her to her apartment, dropped her off. I watched her walk up the stairs, and she was like, okay.
He estimated that time to be approximately 2:30 a.m. the morning of August 7th, and that was the last that he saw her.
Her door had to have been unlocked, though.
Why? Because she had keys?
Because she didn't have any pockets or anything in her dress.
You forgot to give them back when you dropped her off.
Correct.
Investigators take Michael's fingerprints and a DNA sample and set out to determine if he's been truthful about his evening with Heather.
We had ideas where she was, but again, knowing where she was and knowing what she's doing while she's there are very different things.
We wanted to retrieve the video from Handlebars. They'd been out there to eat, and that was their last stop before he drove her home.
The investigators pull the footage in question for insight into what may be Heather's final moments.
We watch it in real time, just like you would a movie. You have to look at these videos and hopefully gain something from it.
Investigators are reviewing security footage of Heather Maples and her friend Michael from the early morning hours of the night she was murdered.
We're able to piece together through that evidence that she had been with Michael. We were interested to see what would happen next.
While Michael seems comfortable showing Heather affection, the pair's time at the diner seems to match his account to police. But what happens after they leave remains a mystery.
Because Michael was the last person that we knew of to see Heather Nicole Maples live, he was someone that the police were very interested in.
After reviewing the footage, investigators turn to the medical examiner's report for additional clues.
They had ruled that the death was a homicide, and that the cause of death was strangulation and blunt force trauma to the head. The rape kit provided them with a DNA sample. That DNA sample was forwarded to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Crime Laboratory for analysis.
When we did get the return of the fingerprint and we got the return of the DNA, Michael was determined not to be a match to any of the identifiers that were at the scene.
With Michael cleared as a suspect, detectives begin looking into the man he described from the bar that night, Artavio. But then they uncover new information about Heather's ex-boyfriend Chaz, who she filed a restraining order against a few months back.
We learned that he had moved, but that he was actually back in town the night of her murder, which piqued our interest even more.
We just went in and conducted the interview.
While he acknowledges his relationship with Heather was rocky, Chaz denies having anything to do with her murder.
He said he hadn't been to her apartment in months. He gave us key details of where he'd been throughout the night. We were able to verify the alibi he provided us, and the time frame just didn't really fit what it would have required to have committed the crime. At the end of the interview, we asked him to consent to DNA. He agreed to do that.
With that interview, we were able to determine that he was not there, that they really had not had any contact, and was later cleared when the DNA came back.
Later that day, with two potential suspects quickly cleared, investigators turn back to Heather's best friend, Kelsey.
I felt like a suspect because I was the one who found her.
And you describe her as your best friend, right?
Correct.
What was Heather's lifestyle? Was she a big drinker? She liked to smoke a joint? She take pills? Was she promiscuous?
She liked to drink. They wanted to get as much information about her and her life as they could. They wanted to know about sex lives, everything.
According to Kelsey, after splitting up with Chaz, Heather's social world expanded.
She immediately was so happy, so free. She could really spread her wings and fly at this point. She was just very charismatic. I think everybody was crushing on Heather. Literally. She was like a boy magnet. She had men around her all the time, staring and wanting.
Kelsey begins listing off anyone of note that Heather has been talking to over the last few weeks.
I told them about Brandon. She just met him and his roommate one night, not too long before that. She introduced me to them, and that was the only time I had ever met them, and I never thought about it again, really.
Through the interview process, we knew we had a Brandon that she was hanging out with. or with a question mark, because no one even really knew who he was. He stayed on our radar.
I'm in Texas, and I don't know any of these people. So we're kind of stunned. Did Heather make friends with somebody who would kill her? We had no idea.
Investigators then turned their questioning to the night of Heather's murder.
Okay, so during last night, which is Thursday night, do you text her, hear from her, talk to her, or anything?
She Snapchatted me.
I woke up and got a drink of water or something, and I saw that she had sent me a Snapchat. And the Snapchat was a picture of her and Artavio at the bar. They both look, like they've been having fun. And so I went back to bed. That was the last thing that I ever received from Heather. Yeah, that was it.
One of the concerns to us was the Artavio gentleman, because he had been with her that night. There had been a photograph of that.
What can you tell me about him?
I don't know a whole lot about him. He seems like a very nice guy. He's funny.
You got any idea why she would send you a picture of her and Octavio, why that's a big deal?
I think she thinks they're pretty good friends.
Okay.
It's conceivable that her suspect could likely be in her phone. Who do you tell your secrets to? Now you tell your secrets to your cell phone.
Having not yet gained access to Heather's device, detectives turned to Kelsey for help.
The detectives said, "We've tried everybody. We've tried Heather's mom to get her passcode. Do you know it?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I do. I was the only person who knew it." So they were elated.
When we went through Heather's phone, we were able to start piecing together a timeline of her last few minutes.
Around the same time Michael claims he dropped her off, Heather sent a message to a name that investigators recognize.
She did have a text message in the late morning hours that she had reached out to that gentleman, Artavio, asking him to come over to the apartment. Did he drive over and kill her?
When investigators examine Heather Maple's phone, they discover she texted her friend Artavio, inviting him to her apartment hours before she was found murdered.
That was one of the last ones she sent out. At least we know she was alive at this time because she reached out to him. That he could have been the last person with her. We wanted to talk to him in case he was involved.
Artavio did know Heather. I don't know the depth of that relationship. We knew that he had been with Heather throughout the night.
Okay, all right. What did you do yesterday afternoon?
I went and hung out with Heather. We drank some tequila, and then we went to gyms for a while.
Okay, and who is Heather?
A friend of mine.
We pulled him in to interview him. We realized that he didn't know that she had died. And so we used it to our advantage to see if is it going to change his answers to the questions.
I'll show you a picture, okay? Do you have any idea when that would have been taken?
It was a little bit before we left to go to gyms.
Who took that picture?
She took it.
Do you know if it was posted or sent to anybody?
It was on Snapchat.
Massey then asks about Heather's late-night text.
Well, if Heather says that you came back over after she got home, would we believe that not to be true?
Yeah, I didn't show back up over there. Heather texted me at like 2:30 or something.
Can I see the text?
Yeah, but I was already asleep. I saw it this morning.
Sometimes a lie is just as good as the truth. If you provide me with certain names of people you were with or locations you were at, and we can't verify that, then why would you be dishonest or untruthful in a case like this?
People saw you go in the apartment. Phone records put you at the apartment. You were with her yesterday. your picture was with her, okay? Because here's what I'm going to tell you at this point, Tate. I believe she texted you to come back over there. You went over there, and then something happened.
No.
And not only was this girl raped, she's dead.
What? No way.
Yes, way, okay? And here's what I'm going to tell you. There's DNA all over that girl. It's going to come back, I believe, to one Mr. Tate.
Well, come back to me.
Once the interview had concluded, we asked him if he would submit to a DNA test. He provided buccal swabs that we collected.
As detectives wait for the lab results, they investigate Artavio's version of events.
As we say, everybody's a suspect until they're not. But we were able to determine that he did not respond because he had actually been with someone else, which made it easier to corroborate his story. So we had to mark him off the list as a suspect at that time. But at the same token, you're like, oh, it's kind of bad right now. We're back to square one again.
Over the next few days, detectives circle back to Heather's list of friends in search of new leads. And one name keeps coming up.
You got the mysterious Brandon guy from the bar, Could he have something to do with it? And could he have known where she lived? Could he be involved?
And it was interesting looking at everyone's notes where Brandon was written down, or Brandon that was circled. And then later Brandon was circled twice.
But something puzzles investigators. With all the accounts of that night, Brandon has never been placed with Heather.
We didn't feel like we were at a total dead end, but we'd worked pretty much for 7 straight days nonstop on this case. Hadn't taken very many breaks, hadn't slept a lot.
Every day we had calls with the detective. He was very good at keeping us up to date. But it almost feels like you're living one of those TV shows. I was angry. I was sad. I was frustrated.
It's amazing how that relationship with a victim's family can drive you when you're tired, fatigued, frustrated. We worked for Jennifer at that point, and we wanted to make sure that we did everything that we could to make sure that at some point she could find peace.
On the 8th day of the investigation, as Detective Massey prepares to leave the office, his plans are interrupted.
That afternoon, I got a phone call from one of the directors down at the TBI crime lab. We had received a hit on the fingerprint that was submitted from the bed. It belonged to the mysterious Brandon. His fingerprints had been previously submitted into the APHIS system by a company that he was seeking employment with, and that they had a match to the one we had submitted from the bloody fingerprint on the bed.
Once we got that fingerprint back, now all of a sudden this Brandon came into full focus and became the center of the investigation. Where does he work? Is he going to school? Who is Brandon?
Eight days after finding Heather Maple's body, police discover that a man named Brandon Bowling left a critical clue on Heather's bed.
So at that point, we knew we were on to at least somebody that was there. So we spent that afternoon researching who is Brandon Bowling, where does Brandon Bowling live, how do we find Brandon Bowling. We were able to ascertain that he was employed as a driver at one of the local food establishments. He was actually working that night. I met him in the parking lot, told him we were working on a homicide of Miss Heather Maples. We asked him if he'd be willing to come to the police department and talk to us.
What is it? 14th. How do you know Heather?
We met at Jim's.
Do you know when that was?
Maybe 3 or 4 months.
There are different ways to interview different people. Sometimes you have to be gentle with them, I tried every technique you could, to be his friend almost, to give him opportunity to have an out as to why it happened.
Ever been to her apartment?
I have been to her apartment.
times you had gone over there, did she have to let you in, or was the door unlocked, or do you remember?
So I think she usually left her door unlocked, so.
Let me ask you this, have you ever been sexually intimate with her?
The first night. No, second night. Second time I met her.
You hooked up with her?
Yeah, we did.
When's the last time you were at her apartment?
That might have been in July.
At that point, we knew obviously he wasn't telling the truth, because there's no way his bloody fingerprint gets there on that bed sheet that night if he's not been there in 2 months. And it was still wet when we actually got on the scene.
Once we confronted him with physical evidence, you could see his demeanor change, his shoulders drop, head drops.
You know you were there, you know what happened. So now you need to tell me so that I can understand.
I don't know I was there. I don't know I was there. That's the thing.
Okay, well then how did your bloody fingerprint get on the bed?
There's no way I did anything. She just got accepted into college. Like, I was happy for her.
It seemed like he was starting to gather, collect the fact that, he's had. That we know it, we've got it.
I don't believe you don't remember what happened. Look at me, young man, because this is important. They can put you to death. Do you understand? Okay. Because this is the most important conversation you had in your life. The only way your bloody fingerprint got there is your hand's bloody. And you had your hands on her when you were raping her. Well, then tell me what happened.
I thought several times throughout my interview with him like he was on the verge of confessing, but he never would. He never would come off of anything other than he'd not been there. At the end of the interview, we asked him to consent to DNA because we told him it could clear the case if he wasn't truly there.
And I want you to just take one at a time. You're going to basically stick it first on your right cheek, swirl it around.
While investigators await the results of the test, based on the strength of the fingerprint evidence, they make their move.
After he basically would not tell us anything that we needed to know.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, at this time, Brandon, you're being charged with first-degree murder in the death of Heather Maples. Okay?
He was subsequently charged with first-degree murder that night.
To build their case, police file a subpoena to access Brandon's phone. Detective Massey then makes a call.
It was uplifting, calling Miss Hunter and telling her, I just booked a man into jail that may have murdered your daughter. Because at least at some point, maybe she found comfort in that.
Detective Massey called me to let me know that he had caught someone. And it was a sigh of relief. But again, we had no idea who he was or why did he do it. I mean, that's the one question that I still have is why. I still don't know.
When investigators gain access to Brandon's phone, however, they gain chilling insight into his motive.
This is a perfect example of the things you can't unsee. What was in that phone will be with us for the rest of our lives.
As investigators scan through the phone of their chief suspect, Brandon Bowling, they make a horrifying discovery.
The video from the cell phone of Brandon Richmond Bowling was one of the most shocking videos I have ever seen in my career. You could see the room of Heather Nicole Maples. You could see the bed. You could see Heather Nicole Maples being raped. And you knew that at this time she was alive. It was obvious she had been beaten and she was suffering. The thing that struck me the most was that I was watching the final moments of the life of Heather Nicole Maples.